Ya vi que estás aquí, tan cerquita de mí, y me hacía falta, porque la última vez que vine tú no estabas, baby. Oh, vamos a tomar toda la noche, mujer, te invito a bailar hasta el amanecer. Tú quieres jugar y no quieres perder, vamos a bailar, quiero verte mover lento, hasta que el llanto solo junte nuestros cuerpos. Lento, yeah. Vamos a tomar toda la noche, mujer, te invito a bailar hasta el amanecer. Tú quieres jugar y no quieres perder, vamos a bailar, quiero verte mover lento, hasta que el llanto solo junte nuestros cuerpos. Muy lento, más tarde vamos a enloquecer, y si me dejas tú serás mi mujer. Cuánto se nota que me quieres comer, por eso sé que vamos a enloquecer. Más tarde vamos a enloquecer, y si me dejas tú serás mi mujer. Cuánto se nota que me quieres comer, por eso sé que vamos a enloquecer. Ya vi que estás aquí, tan cerquita de mí, y me hacía falta, porque la última vez que vine tú no estabas, baby. Dime qué quieres, sin reproche, que solo te lado de ese broche. Vamos al oscuro, hasta las 12. Ay, sí que tú me conoces. Suavecito vamos hasta abajo, tú tomas tequila, yo voy con refajo. Pasamos bueno, te gusta el relajo, y de 100 billetes yo cargo un fajo. Vamos a tomar toda la noche, mujer, te invito a bailar hasta el amanecer. Tú quieres jugar y no quieres perder, vamos a bailar, quiero verte mover lento, hasta que el sol junte nuestros cuerpos. Muy lento, más tarde vamos a enloquecer, y si me dejas tú serás mi mujer. Cuánto se nota que me quieres comer, por eso sé que vamos a enloquecer. ya no quiero a nadie más. Contigo bien quiero pasarla. Mamacita, vámonos de fiesta. Y ahora en mi corazón tú estás. Y ya no quiero a nadie más. Contigo bien quiero pasarla. Mamacita, vámonos de fiesta. Desde que te vi, buscaba una así. Desde que te vi, buscaba una así. Y por fin te conseguí.
Hello, 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 everyone. Hello. Oh my God, my hair. Oh my goodness. Oh, gotta fix that. Gotta fix that. I need a haircut. My hair grows way too fast. Hi, everyone. Hello. Hi. Hello. Okay. Let me see who all is here. I know we got quite a few people, or we have a few people here. Good morning, Tiago. Okay, let's see here. We got Jazznaz. Hello, Jazznaz. Big Braden. Big Brain 2 classics here. Diego. Hey, Diego. Hello, Diego. Another classic here. Laws, another classic. Uh, s- um, for everyone's information, SoCal Foodie is Long Beach Dragon. Okay, so if you see SoCal Foodie, you know it's Long Beach Dragon. Just so you know, hello SoCal Foodie, or I might accidentally call you Long Beach Dragon sometimes. Okay. Thank you, Jazz Naz. Yes, folks, if you're over on Twitch, you can subscribe to my channel for free using Twitch Prime. I did get monetized yesterday, so that's good news. Um, who else we got here? Yeah, I know all about that SoCal with um uh yeah, okay, with the Anna Kasparian. Okay. Um let's see here. Who else? Pizza's here. Pizza, pizza, pizza. Yeah, people really are starting to reveal themselves, aren't they, Pizza? Um and the crackdown is starting, which as it has historically. Um yeah, it has changed the situation. Lee Lane, hello, Lee Lane. Um well, yeah, exactly, Pizza. Elliot Waffle. Hello, Elliot. I love your name still, Elliot Waffles. It always makes me hungry for waffles. I remember watching 2IT in the early 2000s, disappointing to see the both sidesism that Jink and Anna have been doing. They should know better. They definitely should. Hello, Tiago. Good morning. Dolly Boy. Hello, Dolly Boy. Alan. Meowzord. Okay. Meow, meow. Okay. I get it, Big Braden. I get it. Okay. My hair just grows so fast. I think I've told you the story of when I was in school and you're not supposed to have a beard, but by the end of the day, I would shave in the morning, and by the end of the day, I'd have a 4 o'clock shadow and I'd get in trouble. But I'm like, well, what do you want me to do? It grows by the end of the day. Um, Thank you, pizza. Thank you. How dare you, Tiago? My hair's terrible. Okay. 100% jazz Naz. Appeasement doesn't work. Okay. It does not work. Um, Meowzord, it wasn't lawn beach dragon. It was lawn beach dragon. Exactly. There you go. Okay. Uh, that's true. If you don't thank you, Alan. I think there are ads now being shown on Twitch because I was monetized. And if you don't want to see the ads, you could subscribe for $5 a month. Or you can just sign up using Amazon Prime for free. If you can just send me some of Jeff Bezos's money, redistribute the wealth a little bit to me. Okay. Um, let's see here. You don't want to see ads. Okay. Jazz Nez are saying you give an inch and they take them out. That's for sure. Big Braden. Oh yeah, it was funny to see you watch the Piers Morgan thing. I watched the VOD as I was working when you did it. Big Braden, fair, right? We didn't watch it for terribly long, Big Braden, because I got tired of it. Tiago, have you seen my song? I have not yet, Tiago. I'll get to it. I have a lot on my plate at the moment. Big Brain, any facial hair grow is patchy, so I got the French. I got the French won't grow right under your nose bit. Hey, well that's good. If it grew under your nose, you could end up looking like Hitler. So okay. Pete says, everyone ready for the rapture tomorrow? It's going to be one awkward Wednesday when it doesn't happen. Oh pizza, oh pizza, pizza, pizza. You got to know, right? They have you know how many times they've predicted the rapture and then it doesn't come, and then they have an excuse for why it didn't happen, and like, oh, we must have interpreted the scripture wrong. Yeah, it'll be awkward, but they won't notice how awkward it is, I'm sure. Okay. Yes, pizza. Okay. All right, guys. So we have a few things to talk about today. I thank you, Matt Saiga. Thank you, Matt Saiga. That'll count as our first super chat. So I'll put on the jester hat. Thank you, Matt Saigai, very much. Welcome back, Matt Saigai. As always, another classic here. I'll put on the jester hat. Ooh. All right, there we go. And folks, if we get, excuse me, if we get two more, I'll put on the jester collar. Okay. Uh, how's there? I'm doing well, Dolly boy. How are you? Okay. Thank you, Tiago. Thank you. And folks, please don't forget to like the stream. If you're on Twitch, you can follow my channel. Yeah, that's a really good point, Alan. If it's like New Year's when different time zones get raptured first, the first is Australia at midnight, right? Weird amorphous blob. It'll be weird when all my extended family disappears and my immediate family stays, unless Catholics aren't allowed. Which, thinking about it, that's for sure. Oh my God, that's a smart joke there. Weird amorphous blob. A lot of fundamentalists don't even view Catholics as Christians. Um, right. Yes, it is, SoCal. Yes, it is. It's fitting today that free speech is under attack. With what we were talking about a moment ago. Absolutely. Right, pizza. Fundamentalist conservatives misinterpreting scripture. No. Okay. Hey, Robert. Okay, guys. So, this is what we're gonna do today. Okay. So, given the crackdown on free speech we're seeing in the country, I had two different presentations planned. Okay. I had one about freedom of speech and one about the invention of the printing press. And I kind of shoved them together because they're related to each other. So the second half of the presentation is not as doesn't look fully as good as the first half because I kind of quickly made it. But you'll see how they relate to each other. Okay. And then we'll talk about some of the cracking down on free speech we're talking about that we're seeing today. Okay. Um, so, oh, you're totally right, Alan. Evening, comrade, Mithril, another classic here. Yeah. All right. So let's talk about this. Okay. Um, I did Big Braid, and yeah, we watched on Twitch yesterday or on a Discord yesterday. We sort of watched Trump's speech and we played bingo. Malzord made a bingo card. So yeah. Okay. So all right, let's get into it. A couple things here again, folks. If we get two more super chats of $2 or more, I will put on the Jester hat. That also includes 200 bits on Twitch. If we get that, that'll count as one of them. Okay, so let us get into this. Okay, again, this is kind of in two parts. This presentation. Um, I'll go into more detail at some point at some other stream in the future about freedom of speech, but because of what we're going to be talking about, I kind of outline. That's why I put it in parentheses, the miraculous printing press and freedom of speech in parentheses. I kind of do a very cursory outline of freedom of speech for the sake of the conversation we're going to have. But this was mainly going to be a presentation about the invention of the printing press and then relating it to the internet. Okay. So let's talk about this. All right. So, okay. Before I begin, though, let me tell you something. I'm mainly talking about Europe here because the invention of the European printing press has massive implications for Americans, for the Western world, as one might say. But the printing press had already been invented in places like Korea, and Arabs had already invented the Arab empires during the Islamic Golden Age had already invented something similar. Um, that's so cool, Meowzord. That is so cool. You got to see the original with the woodblock printing museum in China. That's very cool. Okay. So again, I am being kind of Eurocentric here, but the reason I'm being Eurocentric is because it relates directly to our American history, okay, and UK history and things like that. Um, and also it had impacts all around the world, but there were other people that sort of invented a printing press earlier. Okay. Um, so let's go. Okay. So before the printing press was around, all right, in Europe, as again, we're being a bit Eurocentric here, documents and books were copied by hand. Okay. So you'd basically have a copy of it, you'd have an original version, and then you'd literally sit there and just copy it word for word into another book or another document into another document. Here you have an image from the Middle Ages of a monk doing that, copying a book. Okay. And they, a lot of mistakes would be made. Okay. Because you would copy it over, you might make a mistake. You might accidentally leave out whole paragraphs, whole sentences. You might repeat things. And then a lot of the times, these monks would actually add things. So if they thought that the person who had made the original made a mistake, they would then fix the mistake or what they thought was a fix in the new version. Okay. And this is a very slow process. And almost all these books and documents um, were hello, bacteria. Welcome, bacteria. And their bacteria is all around us. So I guess we already have bacteria in here, but I love your name, they're bacteria. Okay. So since these texts were, again, these were almost all written by monks and other Catholic Christian clergy members. Okay. And they were almost always written in Latin. Not always, but almost always written in Latin. Okay. And which automatically made it so that a lot of people couldn't read it. Because most people couldn't speak Latin at the time or read Latin. Okay. Then, not only that, because they're monks and they were working within Catholic institutions, excuse me. Okay. They would never really question any Catholic teachings, and they sort of had censorship going on because, yes, descriptoria, exactly. Okay, there was a lot of censorship, right? Because they were monitored, and they were monitored. Exactly, Mithril, and they would really control the message. This didn't always work out perfectly, but for the most part, it did. The Catholic Church very tightly controlled the information coming out of these that these monks were writing and things like that. Um, and so these things almost never went against Catholic teachings, or if they did, it was only very light. And on top of that, there was only certain people in Europe that could even read. Like I said, there were low literacy rates. Very few of these books that were around, and almost all of them were found in monasteries. The Latin language made it hard for people to read it, and the cost of these things made them almost luxury goods. So they were mainly accessible. Um, they were inaccessible to most Europeans. Okay, Robert, there was a proto writing discovery in the last year. That's so interesting, Robert. I didn't know about that. Okay, and I will say though, I just to out of respect to these monks, they did beautiful work. Okay, a lot of times, I put up a picture here of an illuminated manuscript. They would write down with very good handwriting, by the way. These they would write things down, and then they would add all these beautiful illustrations. This is an example of an illuminated manuscript. I got to see when I was in the Netherlands. Very beautiful. They made it. They were almost like works of art. And like I said, they were. It took a lot of time, and these people did put a lot of effort into it, and they were beautiful. Okay. Just a side note there. If you ever have a chance to see an illuminated manuscript, I recommend you do. Gorgeous pieces of art. But again, not very accessible to the average person. Okay. All right. So that's so interesting, Robert. I need to look into that. I haven't heard of that. Okay. So this brings us to Johannes Gutenberg. Okay. And the invention of the printing press. Now, like I said, the printing press had been invented elsewhere, like in Korea, China, and the Golden Age. Um, yeah, absolutely weird. Weird amorphous blob. The Qurans were also copied by hand and very beautifully. Okay. So yeah. Okay. So around 1450. So this is a long time ago, folks. Gutenberg. Um, 100%, Michael, 100%. The clergy also use this lack of knowledge of scripture to promote things like tithing, which I am going to mention, Michael. So if no one can read the Bible except for the clergy, they can kind of tell you what it says and they can reinforce things they want you to believe. Okay. Um, okay. Yeah, you're totally right, bacteria. Okay, so around 1450, Gutenberg, he was German, and created a movable type printing press. And what that is it was based off of a device that people in Europe would use to smash grapes in order to make wine. And he kind of took that model and turned it into a way to easily mass produce and reproduce the written word. Okay, the printing press allowed for much faster and cheaper reproduction of writing. All right. So, like, you could make, if you're like copying things by hand, it's going to take a long time. And then the finished product is going to be very expensive because of all the labor that went into it and things like that. When he invented this, it massively reduced the amount of time that had to be put into the process. Okay. And allowed them to print a lot more. The Bible, if unpredictably, I guess, was the first book to be mass produced by the printing press. And it opened up the door for average Europeans to own and read Bibles without the Catholic clergy interpreting it for them. Okay, so now you could actually own your own Bible and not have to go to your priest to be like, "What does the Bible say?" Because this also meant, and maybe I say it on the next slide here, that they started producing these things with the printing press in colloquial languages. So now instead of having one in Latin, um, uh, there you go, vernacular German. Okay, I'm sorry, not colloquial, vernacular. That's fair. Okay, like the local vernacular. So suddenly people could actually get books in the language they spoke that weren't in Latin, and they could read it themselves. They didn't have to have some authority figure translating it for them. Okay, now remember what I said that the Catholic Church tightly controlled stuff before now. Okay. Thank you very much, Matt Sagai. Thank you very much. Hey, Matt Saigai, thank you so much for that. You know what, Matt Saigai? I think that earns the caller there. Matt Saigai just gifted a bunch of folks in the chat a gift membership. Thank you, Matt Saigai, for that. Okay, I'll put on the caller for that gift. Okay, so all right, so let's continue. Okay, thank you very much, Matt Saigai. All right, so this brings up the Catholic Church after this happened started to panic. Okay, with the invention of the printing press, the Catholic Church started to panic. because suddenly anyone that had a printing press could just start printing off whatever they wanted without any sort of oversight by the Catholic Church, which allowed a bunch of what the of beliefs that the Catholic Church viewed as heresy to start spreading like wildfire all across Europe. So ideas about religion, about government, and things like that that were not kosher for the Catholic Church, okay, that were things that contradicted their authority and contradicted the authority of kings and queens and things like that. So, in response to this, about 50 years after the printing press was invented, in 1501, Pope Alexander VI issued a bill against the unlicensed printing of books. Um, so he basically said, in order to print books, you have to have a license. Okay, you have to have a license. Um, and then a different pope in 1559 promulgated something called the Index Expurgatorius, or the list of prohibited books. So they created a list, which you can see here on the right, which, by the way, was made by a printing press, of books that could be reproduced and books that couldn't be reproduced. Okay. Hello, Plant Sunshine. Okay. And Duck Duck. Hello. Okay. And these laws were upheld by the Catholic Inquisition. Yes, that Inquisition, the brutal Inquisition that would burn people, torture people, and things like that. Okay. Um, and this was the first instance we have in history of what would be what we call today copyright laws, literally the right to copy books. Okay. Um, to prevent, uh, the copying of ideas that people in authority did not want. Okay. Yeah, no one expect. I love Monty Python. Okay, the Catholic Inquisition. Okay, and it was also enforced by local places like the kings and queens of Europe enforced it for the church, and they really cracked down on trying to stop the printing press from influencing people too much. But the cat was kind of out of the bag. Okay, and I mean, it was very brutal. Okay. So, amongst others, the Catholic Church banned or censored books by Descartes. Remember, we talked about Descartes, it was a couple days ago. Cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. They banned his books. They banned Galileo's works, okay, because it contradicted church teaching. David Hume, John Locke, who we're going to talk about later, Jean-Jacques Rousseau and Voltaire, who were all these sort of Enlightenment thinkers who were thinking about uh, different ways of doing government and questioning religious norms. Okay, right, Dally Boy, intellectuals and philosophers getting censored. And again, folks, as always, try to look for similarities in our own time. Okay. So, and remember, we also talked about, when we talked about the French Revolution, the divine right of kings, which is the idea that if you question a king, you're questioning God, you're questioning the church. Okay. Weird amorphous blob. You're right. Honestly warranted. They're trying to save us from Cartesian graphs. Okay, that is fair. Okay. And it got to the point where they started burning people alive at printers, people who were um, uh, printing books at the stake as heretics. On the right here, you have an image of a printer, one of these printers being burned alive because he was considered a heretic. Okay. Uh, because they were losing control of the situation. They could no longer control how people were thinking and feeling about things. All right. And let me point out something else here, folks. You know, in the United States and elsewhere, there's something called freedom of the press. The press. That is because when you make a book using a printing press, okay, you literally press the words into the page in order to get the ink on the page. So the word press is basically freedom to print things, okay? Freedom to use a printing press, all right? Which is what journalists largely do. Now, obviously, not necessarily anymore because there's online media, et cetera, but you see what I mean, okay? That's where the word comes from, the press, freedom of the press, okay? All right. So, but it was kind of too late for the church, okay? It was kind of too late because the printing press and Catholic corruption, because these ideas still got out, because people could easily quickly produce things and send them out before they had a chance to be censored. They could hide who published the things that were questioning the church. The printing press and Catholic corruption, which I believe was at Mithril. Someone mentioned this earlier. Someone mentioned earlier the Catholic clergy was extremely corrupt. Okay, they would do tithing where they'd basically make people pay the church to fund it. Even though a lot of them were extremely wealthy, they also did something called indulgences, where you would have to pay them to forgive your sins. None of which is in the Bible, by the way. But as people started reading the Bible, there's something like, oh, wait a minute, why are we doing these things? This makes no sense. This doesn't say this anywhere in here. It seems like the clergy are just trying to make money, okay? Amongst other things that were very corrupt about the Catholic Church because they were a power player, okay? So, and eventually this sparked something called the Protestant Reformation in 1517. And this is where we get the idea of Protestants, okay? Protestants who were protesting, that's why they're called Protestants, the Catholic Church. Right, Big Braden? Okay. Yeah, they didn't believe in a pay to, yeah, the Meowsor, the original premium subscription, right? I did, and then Big Brain, I didn't realize God believed in the pay to win model. Yep. Well, okay. And because of the printing press, this allowed the people to read the Bible themselves in their own language and without the censorship or interpretation of a priest. And over time, for a number of reasons, not just because of the printing press, but because of economics and stuff, literacy rates rose, and people were able to read subversive works that criticized the powerful, questioned religious institutions, and promoted new scientific discoveries. Weird, I'm over anti-revisionist, anti-Baptism. I want the Amish to be militant communist. That is so true. The anti-Baptists, I might do a stream on them sometime. They're super interesting. Okay, and people all across Europe, the cat was out of the bag. Okay, um, the cat was out of the bag. People all across Europe began to question the authority of the Catholic Church, their governments, and many other traditions, because they could easily access these ideas, and no one could really keep them from seeing them. And they made very convincing arguments. All right. So for Protestants, right? For Protestants and later Catholics, but for Protestants mainly, okay? Freedom of speech and of the press became an essential part of their religious practices and beliefs. So it almost became part of the religious belief almost, okay? Because you need to be able to read the Bible and you need to be able to read it in your own language, and you need to be able to interpret God and Jesus for yourselves. That was part of their beliefs. That's part of the reason they broke off from the Catholic Church. Okay. So this became a very standard way of thinking, especially for Protestants, that we need freedom of speech and freedom of the press so that we can discover God and we can work harder towards establishing a better way of doing our religion. Uh, okay. This is very important to understand because, folks, okay, because folks, America, right? The UK ended up becoming Protestant, and early America, the colonial America, was largely Protestant. Okay, and a lot what was mainly Protestant. Okay, and a lot of these ideas. You're right, Dolly Boy. Okay, I know. A lot of these ideas were part of people's religious beliefs in early America, okay? That you need freedom of the press and things like that, and you need freedom of speech as part of your religious beliefs, okay? Um, and they didn't like Catholics, so that was another thing, okay? But anyway, um, okay, so that brings me to this question I want to ask all of you. So the printing press revolutionized the way information was disseminated, and it opened up people to being able to think about many other different things that they wouldn't have been thinking about before, and allowed them to start questioning things that were not questioned before. And you typically see this when a new technology comes about. All right. Groundbreaking technologies that open up information tend to have a backlash, like the Catholic Church did with the printing press. And so I want to ask all of you this: how is the invention of the internet and social media similar to the invention of the printing press? How has how has the invention of the internet and social media been similar to the invention of the printing press in terms of the dissemination of ideas and the attempts to censor it and things like that?
Yes, Dolly Boy, it is uncontrollable by the state. And have we also know free dissemination? 100%, Robert. And about to have another Munster rebellion, right, Meowsord? The Anti-Baptist. Okay. Uh, yeah, absolutely weird amorphous blob. Okay. The internet opened up similar place, but significantly less reliant on capital, and thus opening up a space for alternative media and stuff like that, with all of its consequences, good and bad. Correct. Okay. It also, you're right, Robert. It also made clicks group easier to form. We see the horrors done worldwide by our government, despite the emphasis of censorship. 100% Fox Emblem. And it's sped up. Okay, you guys got great ideas here. The good and the bad. There's the constant free flow of info available at our fingertips, but there's also a lot of misinformation. Alan, you're right. And let me tell you, with the invention of the printing press, and I didn't mention this, but it was sort of the same. There was also a lot of people writing crap. Okay, uh, but yeah, all right. Spread up the dissemination of ideas. Okay, yeah, 100%. Thanks, CERN, for the internet. 100%, Matt Saigai, our resident science expert. Okay, so we are living through an era of massive change, partially because of the internet. And a lot of what we see happening today is due to the free dissemination of new ideas that can get around government censorship, mainstream media censorship. And it's making people have new ideas about what they value in information. It is causing government backlash. It's causing all these things. You're right, Michael. However, a lot of this was lost after platforms started to control most of the attentions of users. You're right, Michael. And you'll notice, Michael, too, that like even during the printing press, the Catholic Church started trying to control stuff, right? They implemented copyright laws and crap like that to try and so yeah, okay. But in the end, it didn't end up working, right? There was just too much free information going around in Europe. Yeah, you're right, Mithril. You're right. Okay. The means of distribution is controlled by the wealthy, and I will say though, right? It's not a perfect monopoly on control, right? You can find what you want to find on the internet, but you're right. It is still based off a profit motive and advertising and things like that. It is a bit different from the printing press. Yeah, you're right, Alan. You're right. Okay, and so this is complicated, right? But I just want you to think about how a lot of the things we're experiencing today might be linked back to this new ability to disseminate information. Okay. And it is also starting to bring up questions again about freedom of speech and freedom of the press. Okay. Uh, all right. Y'all got me there? All right. So now that is the invention of the printing press. Meowsword, any correlation between the printing press and surveillance, like Palantir? Maybe they printed more systematized documentation of crimes. Yes, Meowsword. As a matter of fact, some of the evidence that would be used against some of these printers who were burned alive would be the books that they had printed. Okay, so Catholic clergy, inquisitors, and enforcers of monarchs, something like that would try to hunt down books. There literally a lot. There were people whose jobs was just to hunt down books and read them, and then make sure that, and find out who had published them, and use it to go after certain groups of people and use it as evidence in court. So yeah, um, and you can see, and it's a bit different now, but yes, okay. Um, and it allowed, by the way, a lot of European monarchs to have evidence to use in court against people who they wanted to go after later. Okay, if you wrote something down. And it's worse today though because everyone puts lots of their information online. Um, okay, so let's go on now. Now you have an idea here about. By the way, folks, there's a survey that goes out for academic historians, and they almost always rank Johannes Gutenberg as one of the most influential figures in human history because of this. Okay, because he was so influential with his invention of the printing press, it really kind of sparked the modern era, or sparked the early modern era, the fact that the printing press was invented. Dally Boy, okay, Dally Boy says, imagine having that as a job, but somehow one of the books has such a huge revelation you get converted. Dally Boy, that happened. I have read histories about this. There were people who were priests and stuff who were doing censorship who started reading the books that they were supposed to censor and had revelations like, "Oh my God, these people are right." Okay. Um, Weird amorphous blob. Just a week ago, the list of supposedly China-backed left organizations House Republicans have been pushing to potentially even give criminal penalties included Breakthrough News, which just reports. Yeah. Yep. This is bad, okay? And that brings me to free speech, okay? All right, so that brings me to, and again, this part of the presentation I kind of added later. I was just going to talk about the printing press, but then because of what else we're talking about today, I thought it'd be important to talk about free speech. But remember, the printing press kind of put in a lot of, especially Protestants' heads, that link between freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and their religious beliefs, okay? So John Locke, let's talk about John Locke. I hope to God everyone here has at some point heard of John Locke before, because God help you if your teachers never taught you about him. He's so important for a lot of things, okay? So John Locke, he lived from 1632 to 1704, from the UK, from Britain, okay? And he believed that life, he was a philosopher, an Enlightenment thinker, very influential Enlightenment thinker, and he believed that life, basically, the purpose of human life was finding God and live and you know, was finding God. Okay, living God's word in their own way and the best way they could. All right, and remember how we talked about Descartes, who had decided. That's okay, big brain. Remember we talked about Descartes, who said, "I think, therefore I am." We can't really know anything. We need to roll back our knowledge and start from scratch. So John Locke started doing that, and he realized, he goes, "Well, if we believe in God, then we must assume then that all human beings are born equal under God." Okay? Only later do we get cultural ideas about like kings and queens and authority figures, okay? But we're all born naked and screaming in the world, and we're all born equally. And then humans will try to divide us, create hierarchies and things like that. Now, this was a very revolutionary way of thinking at the time, okay? And he said that at birth, God grants humans three rights. You have three rights when you're born that God has given you, and they can't be taken away. For the Americans in here, if this sounds familiar, it's because this guy is who influenced the quote unquote founding fathers. Okay. So at birth, God grants humans three rights: life. So no one should be able to take your life from you. Okay. Because God gave it to you. Liberty. You are born free, are you not? You're born with the ability to be free. And property. Okay. We have a right to own things. Um, and he actually kind of had a flawed argument when it came to that one, but that's what he said. Okay, life, liberty, and property. He then went on to say that the purpose, Alan, right? This guy was woke. Owning an AR-15 is my God-given right. Damn it, right? Okay. Um, Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, weird amorphous blob. I was actually going to mention that. Although Locke was generally anti-slavery, kind of. It's complicated. A lot of these folks were not um, great. Okay, you're right. You're right, Michael. He did think that the executive should be led by a monarch, but with certain stipulations. Okay, yeah, exactly, Dolly Boy. Okay, um, okay, so John Locke is considered the father of the liberal tradition. Liberalism, okay? Um, oh, Trump failed, I would love to do that. Okay. Uh, so he was the founder of sort of liberalism in a way, kind of. There were other people too, John Mill also, but, okay, and he, thought that the purpose of government ought to be to maximize these three natural rights for people. So, the government isn't there just to do things for itself. It should exist for the purpose of protecting people's life, liberty, and property. So the government, there can be laws and there can be controls on society, but they all should be aimed towards protecting people's life, liberty, and property. Okay. This brings us to freedom of speech. Okay. Okay. Yep, we are. Trump failed. Okay. Regulation of speech prevents people from freely seeking the divine. Remember what I said, that John Locke was a Protestant and he deeply believed that the purpose of life was to serve God and to, okay. And he, like I said, the Protestants had this idea of free speech and stuff being heavily linked to their religion. And so regulation of speech prevents people from freely seeking the divine. God will be the one that judges what people say and do. The government should not, unless, of course, it has to do with violating people's life, liberty, and property. Okay. All right. Okay, Meowsword, this is why I hate the Cope argument of life, liberty, property as an American's citizens only right. Locke was clear here. Yep. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. 100% Meowsword, okay? And a lot of rights come out of these rights too, right? Okay. So this brings us to the American First Amendment to the Constitution. This is the stuff that at some other point I'll do a much more in depth about this, but just to kind of get us talking about what's happening in the country. Okay. So the so-called, you notice I put so-called, right? The so-called founding fathers were Protestants, right? Almost all of them were Protestants. And they care deeply about the right to the press, to print and speak freely. They were heavily influenced by the writings of John Locke and other thinkers. I'm kind of oversimplifying here, but other thinkers. And that being said, the first draft of the U.S. Constitution did not contain a Bill of Rights. All right. They had to add that after there was a lot of pushback from people called anti-federalists to add it. Exactly, Mithril. You're right. You're right, Mithril. And that's the other thing too, Mithril. That's a good point. There is a difference. Trump failed. Yes, he was one of the big Enlightenment thinkers. Okay, there is a difference between private property and personal property. All right. So John Locke was about personal property. Like, even, by the way, folks, even under like communist regimes, you have personal property. You have things you own that are yours. Okay. Private property is where you own land and you own labor. You own like the fruits of someone else's labor and things like that, which is different. But I would agree with him that you have a right to personal property. There is an issue with this, right? Because if you view people as property, like slaves, that's an issue. But again, the general idea here, okay? So the first draft of the U.S. Constitution did not contain a Bill of Rights, and pushback from the anti-federalists resulting in the inclusion of the Bill of Rights. Okay, I'm not going to go too much in depth in that, but the First Amendment was one of those first 10. Okay, so this is the First Amendment to the American Constitution. Now, think about what I just said, about how for a lot of these Protestant folks, their belief in freedom of speech in the press was deeply linked up with their religious beliefs and their desire to freely practice their religions in order to find the divine in the world and things like that. Okay. So there's a reason why all these things are included in one amendment and not separate amendments, because to them, all these things overlap. So let me read it to you. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Hello, Victoria. Okay. So you notice freedom of religion, or the anti-establishment clause, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, right of people to assemble, and right of people to complain are all linked together in this one amendment, because to these Protestant founders, that was all very important. Okay. So, again, though, so this seems absolute, doesn't it? Exactly, Dolly Boy. And this is what bothers me, Dolly Boy. It's very clear in the Constitution and amongst the founding fathers, that there should be no national religion. The government cannot favor any one religion over the other, and things like that. It is one of the things I like about America. Is it so strictly separates church and state? Alas, that is being massively eroded. And okay, so all right, let's go on here. However, so this might make it seem like all speech is able to be free and open. It is not. Okay, so throughout history in the United States, there have been multiple court cases and decisions that have sort of resulted in speech being regulated in specific circumstances. So let me explain. All right, the first regulation that one can have on your speech. By the way, speech including your expression, Yeah, no, absolutely, Big Brain. I totally agree. Okay, I'm not a big fan of all the Bill of Rights. Okay, but I do like the first one. Okay, right. Okay, so you can't so the government can regulate speech. And by the way, the First Amendment only applies to the government. It does not apply to private corporations, which to me is annoying. But anyway, I know, right? Fox emblem. Okay, I know. Okay, so where are the atheists in government? So okay, so the first thing you have to understand is that when you're speaking, okay, when you're doing legal speech. So remember, speech includes expression, art, speaking, writing. It includes anything where you express yourself in any sort of form. Okay, so the government has a right to regulate the time, place, and manner of speech. If but they can only regulate the time, place, and manner of speech under certain circumstances. One, they have to be able to prove to a judge that it serves a significant government interest to do so. Okay, so yeah, you're totally right. Yep, you're right. Weird amorphous blob. Okay, so they have to go before a judge and be like, the reason we're purposely choosing a time, place, and manner for this speech is because it's dangerous or whatever. Okay, so they have to serve a significant government interest to like uh, stop or change the time, place, or manner of speech. They still can't stop the speech, but they can. For example, let me say, if there's a protest going on, the government can require for you to have a license to do that protest, which means you might not be able to do it right away. You might have to wait a little bit, and they might say where you can do it. They might say the place you can do it and how you can do it. Okay, but again, they have to prove that there's a significant government interest in doing that. What they're limiting, the time, manner, and place that they're limiting has to be narrowly tailored to achieve that interest. And they have to leave open ample alternatives for channels of communication. Okay. So that is one way the government can regulate speech. If it's legal speech, they can regulate the time that it's being done, the place it's being done, and how it is done, but they can't stop it. Okay. And again, they can only do that if they have those three things. Okay. All right. Okay. Now then, there are exceptions to this. There are actually things that are illegal to say or express. All right. In the United States. Michael, that is a good question. Okay. That's a very good question. Michael says, is there a specific definition for government interest or is it supposed to be vague? It is supposed to be vague, Michael. That being said, you all know I'm not like a rah, rah, rah America guy, but judges in the past have typically been very strict about this. So it actually has worked pretty well. Most of the time when the government does time, place, manner regulation, the judges are extremely hard on the government. So they have to have a really good reason to claim it's in the government's interest. Like if it has to do with danger or keeping people safe, then yeah. But it's very hard for the government to make this claim, okay, that it's not in the government's interest. This doesn't always work, but in courts, it is oftentimes really hard for the government to prove that it's in their interest, okay? Um, okay. So there are some forms of speech that are outright illegal, okay? And this was established through many court cases and things like that. First, obscenity. Okay, obscenity. This one annoys me. Okay, okay, kind of. You'll see what I mean. We're a very puritanical country. We're very sensitive about people's private parts and things like that, even though they're just human body parts. Okay, so obscenity can be illegal, uh, but it has to meet three standards. Right, Big Braden? Okay. Um, so so, for example, we're talking things like pornography, okay, or like public displays of pornographic material or whatever, okay? So, all right. So, three standards have to be met legally for something to be considered obscene and therefore illegal. One, the average person applying contemporary community standards would find the work taken as a whole appeals to the prurient interest, as in appeals to like baser human instincts. This language is very authoritarian to me. I've never been a fan of obscenity laws in the United States. Like, who cares if people have prurient, whatever that means, interests? Okay, so it has to meet all three of these, though. So one, if a judge looks at it and says, okay, uh, most people would interpret this as being obscene. Okay. Second, whatever the work, writing, or speech depicts, it has to be patently offensive, um, uh, or sexual conduct or excretory functions specifically defined by applicable state law. So that's okay, Demosthenes. Welcome, Demosthenes. So it has to be something that's offensive, that is like obviously offensive and obviously repulsive to people. And you notice they especially indicate um, yeah, right, Jazz Naz, okay. It has to be, like especially body parts, sexual conduct, or excretory functions. So like pooping and peeing and stuff. Okay. It's like again, who cares, right? Like anyway, it's like get over it. Like get over it if you like you don't want like bodily functions, just look away, right? But anyway, sorry, this is my bias coming out. Okay. Lastly, whether the work taken as a whole lacks serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. Again, who cares, right? If it's art, then, who are you to say that it lacks literary, artistic, political, or scientific value? Regardless, that is one thing, and it's called the Miller test. You have to meet those three standards for something to be legally prevented from being shown because it's obscene. All right? Okay. So that's one thing that can be banned in the United States. Two, fraud. I don't put much on this slide because it's obvious, right? Like you don't have a right to make counterfeit money, print counterfeit money, or like write a fake legal document, or lie to someone about some business thing you're going to do for them. That is illegal. That is speech that is illegal. You cannot do fraud. Okay, which is why Trump should be in prison. Anyway, so again, that's just an easy one. Fraud. Okay, you can't do fraud. A second thing here, speech that incites imminent lawless action. Um, yeah, right, big brain. I totally agree. People act like if these things didn't exist, it would be chaos. In Canada, it is completely legal for women to walk around topless. I have literally never seen anyone do it though, right? And who cares? That's like normal body parts. Like who cares? I think there's a lot of weird misogyny mixed up with that too. Women can decide to do that if they want, right? Dolly Boy, yeah, this was pretty so. Yep, okay. So speech that incites imminent lawless action. So the Supreme Court has held that advocacy for the use of force is unprotected. So you cannot advocate for the use of violence or force or other illegal type things when it is directed to inciting or producing imminent lawless action. So if it is very likely to incite it, like if you tell a crowd of people, let's go to the Capitol and let's do an insurrection, and there's a bunch of angry people there, that would be illegal. Okay. Which is, by the way, basically what Trump did. He basically said, we got to fight, fight, fight. Okay. Well, that was sort of illegal speech. He incited an insurrection. Of course, he wasn't held accountable for it. He was impeached, but wasn't found guilty. Okay. And so you cannot incite imminent lawless action with your speech. Okay. And this is also very hard to prove. And most of the time, judges will say the government can't enforce it. But if it's obvious, exactly, Robert, like, uh, Drew Zella, you can totally tell people to jaywalk. The government, like, if a judge would not care, okay? Judges, like I said, are actually pretty good at enforcing these things, like being pretty fair about these things. It was Big Brain, and the Jan 6 investigation was kind of a joke. Okay. So, yeah, like Robert, like telling people to stand back and stand by, okay? But you notice how Trump would use vague language, which made it hard to, hello, by the way, Drusilla, which made it really hard for for a judge to find him guilty because they're extra careful when it comes to speech. All right. So you basically have to be very direct about it. Let's go have an insurrection. Here's some weapons. Let's go do it. Okay. And then, by the way, this actually was established in 2017. This also includes something else. Literally, this was not an abridgment of speech until 2017. So this was a very close. Okay. Um, This includes inciting someone to suicide. All right. So if anyone remembers that case of that woman that I think she was a teenage girl who incited her boyfriend to unalive himself. The Supreme Court ruled, yep, that is inciting imminent lawless action. Okay, so this now includes inciting people to self harm or suicide. Okay, um, but like you got to be very direct about it and like do it often and often and often. All right, okay, so that's just an addendum there. Fighting words. Here's another thing you can't do legally. That is speech that can be abridged. True threats of violence that are directed at a person or group of persons that have the intent of placing the target at risk of bodily harm or death are generally unprotected. Okay, so you cannot be threatening people with violence because it's not only if they are under threat, it's if you put the fear into them that they're under threat. I mean, and they're reasonably fear of being under threat, then you can't do this. All right. You'll notice a lot of the conservatives after Charlie Kirk, uh, um, a lot of the stuff about Charlie Kirk, a lot of like the people, um, yeah, Michael, absolutely. Well, oh, that's a good question, Michael. Oh, I don't know. That's a really good question. So if you were like a lot of conservatives, we all know they want to go out and start screaming about like unaliving certain people. You can see it in their eyes, right? A lot of the time, but they don't. They will tend to do it in a roundabout way, where they say, "Oh, they do it sort of passively or indirectly," because as long as it's indirect, you can kind of promote violence indirectly, but you just can't do it directly. Yep, you're right, Kimberly. Unless you're a woman being stalked, then nobody can do anything to help. Yeah, and Kimberly, that's a big issue. Those laws are very badly enforced in regards to stalking and stuff. And most of the time, the police will side with whoever's doing the stalking. It's a lot of laws are really bad, are sort of not enforced well when it comes to women being abused and things like that. Maybe we'll talk about it on stream sometime. Um, okay. Yep. Right, Fox Emblem. Okay, so but you cannot do direct threatening, okay? But folks, here's another loophole to this law, all right? Threats may not be punished if a reasonable person would understand them as obvious hyperbole. Exactly, Kimberly. And that you know that where that word comes from, Kimberly? Maybe I'll talk about it sometime. Hysterical women, and there's lots of studies that show that women are not taken as seriously by investigators, by doctors, and things like that, because there's this innate cultural bias that claims that women are overly emotional and can't think rationally, and it's very misogynistic. But it leads to women not being protected by the law a lot of the times, and it is really horrific. I could rant about this forever, Kimberly, but for the sake of this, maybe I'll do a thing on it, something about it sometimes. Okay. Um, okay. All right. So, a lot of times, folks, you'll notice that when people online or something are kind of incite violence, they'll claim afterwards, "It was just a joke. It was just a joke. I was just being hyperbolic and exaggerating." Da 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 da. Okay, because that helps you get around this law. Okay. All right. Here we go. More about Trump now. Right. You also are not allowed to engage in defamation, all right? So defamation, this is very hard to prove in court, defamation is. And judges don't or almost most of the time these cases get dismissed. Okay? Yeah, it's a prank, bro. Exactly, Dolly Boy, okay? Yeah, Robert, the 1992 spousal abuse laws. Yep. And think about that, Robert. That was in 1990 excuse me, fucking 2. Women were like there weren't spousal abuse laws before 1992. It shows how much we appreciate women in this country, doesn't it? Okay. You're right. You're totally right. Victoria. Okay. By the way, Victoria, I posted my Brazil video, by the way, and I mentioned you at the beginning of it, so you should watch it. Anyway. Okay. Um, so in order for right, Malzord, right? Bin Laden said it was a prank. Okay, so defamation. So there are 3 kinds of things that can be, well, perjury is separate, but I put it on the same page. So slander and libel. Slander is when you speak words that are that defame someone, and libel is where you write words. Um, libel is where you write words that defame someone. So, um, yeah, it does, Dally Boy. It does. Okay, which Dally Boy is kind of problematic in my opinion. I think the UK, their libel laws are messed up. Yeah, no offense, but like the idea here is that in the UK, uh, if you claim someone's done libel, it is the person who's accused has to prove that it's not libel. In the United States, the person who is doing the accusing of libel has to prove that it is libel. Um, but so it's complicated. But okay, so yep, Big Braden. That's because it's much harder to defend yourself from libel claims in the UK than it is in the United States. So okay, so if in order for something to be considered slander or libelous or slander, it is really hard in the United States. Okay, you have to meet three conditions. One, the speech. So the speech that the speech you used must have caused measurable harm to the victim's reputation and or material conditions. Okay. So what you say actually has to harm the person that's suing you. Two, and all three of these things have to be correct. Okay. If any one of them is missing, you can't sue for it or it'll be tossed out. Two, the speech contained falsehoods. So things that were literally false that the speaker knew were falsehoods when they published it. Okay. So, one, it has to have caused harm. Two, you have to be able to prove that the things that was said were false, and you have to prove that that the person who said them knew it was false when they said it. And three, it was done with malicious intent. Okay. So, is what this person said done with the malicious intent of harming that person? These are really hard to prove in court. All right. And you'll notice here, I said, and the standard is even higher for people who are for public figures like politicians. So the standard is even higher when you are a public official. And I'm looking at you, Donald. That's why I say here, because Donald Trump is constantly is suing people for libel and suing people for defamation. Okay, constantly, 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 and he loses a lot of those. But when he does it, it costs tons of legal bills for the people he sues. And so lots of times they settle even though they'll likely win because he has so much money and power, he can just sue them until they can't afford to pay for their lawyer anymore. So even though we have these laws, elites can kind of get around them by using the power of the purse, their money and their power. Okay. All right. Schools. This is the last one I'm going to talk about. Schools. Okay. When the government, uh, so when you go to a public school, you don't have freedom of speech. Well, let's put it this way. You have freedom of speech, but it is limited. All right. The Supreme Court ruled in Tinker versus Des Moines School District. Thank you, Elliot. The chilling effect. That's what I was looking for, Elliot. Okay. It's called a chilling effect. Okay. In 1969, so teachers and staff at a school can restrict speech when it materially and substantially interferes with the requirements of appropriate discipline and the operation of the school. Okay. And guys, this sounds authoritarian to me, but as a teacher, I love this. I'm glad that I can suppress speech. That sounds horrible, I know. But like imagine if you had a student who was just started yelling the N-word in class or something, or came in with a shirt that had a gun on it or something. Like that's technically freedom of speech, right? You can say those things, you can wear that, but in a school environment, that is not conducive to a good learning environment and it's very detrimental. Okay. So schools can regulate speech. They have to have good reason for it, but they can regulate speech. And oftentimes they'll get sued if they regulate it incorrectly. Later court decisions added more situations where restrictions were possible, including student speech about drugs, vulgar and offensive language, and school operated newspapers. The primary basis for the educator distinction is the concept of in loco parentis. So, in loco parentis is the idea that when you're in school, the agents of the state are in place of your parents. Okay, they are doing the job of parents while you're in the school. SoCal, that's hilarious. I love that. Okay. Big Brain and Foodie. I remember getting in trouble in high school. Yeah, Fox Emblem. I agree with you. A lot of times schools take this way too far. Um, yeah. Okay. Um, at the same time, Fox Emblem, I am not defending what that school did, but I'm sure you could understand, like, there's a lot of trauma amongst teachers and administrators in regards to something that would be called manga assassination classroom. I get that it's ignorant, but um, I guess I'm kind of split on that, right? I mean, I hope that I hope there was like more of an investigation. They didn't just suspend your friend, but they probably did. A lot of schools do. Okay. So I remember in 11th grade, a teacher got so called. Yeah, that's funny. Okay. I remember getting in trouble in high school for yelling at a teacher because another student. Um, Meowsord, you're 100% right. Yeah, you're right. And a lot of teachers don't know these things, folks. I never once, while I was being educated to be a teacher, learned uh, that students have some free speech rights. I had to learn that myself. And for example, folks, uh, uh, for example, the Pledge of Allegiance, you are not legally obligated to stand up or say the Pledge of Allegiance at the beginning of the school day when the rest of your class does. And I knew teachers who would get upset at students who did not do the Pledge of Allegiance. And I would have to go to those teachers and be like, "Hey, I'm a social studies teacher. That's illegal. You can't stop your students from you can't force your students to say the Pledge of Allegiance or punish them if they don't, okay?" Um and yeah, there are certain things that need to be regulated in schools for the safety and of the environment and stuff, but yeah, educators need more education on this. Let's put it that way. Um, okay. Uh, oh yeah, Victoria. I heard that there was someone from Brazil posted on that video I posted. And Victoria, and they said that they were at those protests too. Okay. Yeah, Big Braden, you're right. And I like that is also oppression of free speech. At least in the United States, it would be viewed that way. If you target students who don't do it, even if you're not punishing them, that's sort of suppressing free speech. Okay, so lastly here, folks. So that's that. So all of these things are well and good, but the government has other ways of regulating and censoring speech with the power of the purse. Um, okay. This is all well and good, but the government has other ways of regulating and censoring speech with the power of the purse and the bully pulpit. Hello, RBP. I don't think I said hi to you earlier. Okay, so there are all these, those are you. It's very hard to regulate speech in the United States unless you do any of the things I just mentioned. But there are ways to get around it if the government or elites want to regulate speech. As I just mentioned, the wealthy can use the power of the purse. They can use legal films and things like that. Welcome back, Tiago. They can use legal proceedings and stuff to bankrupt people who resist them. Okay. They can use the power of regulatory agencies like the FCC to do things like get Jimmy Kimmel banned, okay, or to um, uh, go after newspapers or colleges and things like that, okay? Because you can come up with all sorts of legal jargon and shit to kind of get around it. As long as you don't say you're regulating speech, you can go after other things like the money and things like that, okay? You can also use the bully pulpit, which is where you get on TV if you're the president and you say they're fake news, CNN is fake news, New York Times is fake news, which will hurt the bottom line of those companies and will pressure them to shut up. Okay. Um, oh, I got you, Fox. I didn't know that. Okay. So then, yeah, then that's unfair. That is unfair. Okay. Big Brain, I even think as a teen, I was easy to get along with. I was only really rude to or arrogant teachers. Good. One teacher called me, my class, a bunch of oh my God. I almost said it out loud there. That's horrific. That is horrific, Big Braden. I am sorry you went through that. Okay. Um, Okay, that's horrific. Okay, SoCal, as long as you don't say you're regulating speech, is where Donnie Doddard and his FCC screwed up. You're right. You're right. And I suspect they're going to be sued because they admitted it. God damn it! I just went to the video. What video? What video Trump failed? Okay, so I'm back for a bit. Okay, Big Braden. Yeah, I complained to the principal about that because I was really angry. You should have been Big Braden. You should have been Big Braden. Um, oh, of course, C. Morales. Of course, right? So the Department of Justice, they're suing everyone. Donald J. Trump is suing everyone except everything except the Epstein files. Interesting, huh? Hmm. I wonder why. I wonder why. And by the way, that letter that Trump sent to Epstein. If so, technically, uh, if Donald Trump is correct, and MAGA is correct, and that is a fake letter that was released by the Epstein estate, they should sue the Epstein estate for defamation because if it's fake, they knew it was fake and they're trying to harm Trump. But alas, they're not suing them. I wonder why. Because they know it isn't fake and they won't be able to prove it in court. I totally agree, Kimberly. The police do need to learn about free speech. There's a lot of folks on YouTube called First Amendment auditors who they're kind of annoying, but like it's kind of fun to watch. Um, who actually go out and try to basically um, trick police into violating their rights, as partially as a way of teaching the police, but also as a way of making money off suing. But I recommend, C. Morales, but I recommend if anyone's interested, go look up free speech auditors because a lot of police aren't really aware of the laws around free speech. Okay. Um, okay. So, so we have talked about this. They absolutely do so, Cal. Don't get me wrong. That's kind of why I truncated what I was saying. But yeah, I hope so, Joshua. I hope if the administration ever ends, yeah, I hope he gets sued. Oh, I know, right, Elliot? Yeah, no, you're right, Elliot, because of free speech laws, right? Okay, all right. So, we've talked about that. Now, by the way, folks, again, if we get what is it, 3 more super chats, I will put on the jester makeup. If you're over on Twitch right now, please follow or you can subscribe for $5 a month, or you can subscribe for free using your Amazon Prime subscription, which will give Jeff Bezos' money to me. And if you want to become a member on YouTube for as little, only 99 cents a month, you'll get access to a bunch of cute little emojis, which can be seen in chat here. You'll get a cute little jester hat next to your name, like Big Braden has. And you also get that jester hat if you're over on Twitch, like Toya or Robert has. And you get access to a bunch of cute little emojis, which I'm slowly increasing the number of. Okay. Bye-bye, Big Braden. Okay. All right. So, I wanted to talk about some other things. Okay. Um, I'm going to go back to my face. All right. Woof. Ugh, my head is killing me today. Okay. So, um, well, you're missing out, Tiago. I may not be buying you, but you're missing out. Okay. Um, you're totally right. Trump failed. Okay. Uh, okay, guys. So, uh, oh, I know, Michael. I hope they do, though. I hope they do. I agree. Okay. Um, I agree, Michael, about that, about the Democrats. Okay. So, there are a few things I want to watch because we are talking about freedom of speech and how Donald Trump has been cracking down on freedom of speech. All right. So, what I would like to do is let's talk about a few of the things that have been going on. And as I said before, as I think I mentioned you all, I thought would be happening. They are cracking down on it now pretty heavily after Charlie Kirk, which happens historically. They've been doing it for a while, but it's definitely gotten worse now. I'm sure all of you know this. So I have a few things pulled up here to show you. And if you don't mind, first I'm going to use the restroom because you all know I don't know, I feel like I'm an infinite font of liquids. So what I'm going to do is while I'm using the restroom here, I've actually seen this video, so I am going to play this for you while I'm using the restroom. Okay. Uh, Okay, now you all know I'm not a fan of a lot of the mainstream news channels here. Okay, how dare you, Tiago? Okay, but they occasionally they do good segments. And so we're gonna watch Chris Hayes, who did a segment on uh, the Jimmy Kimmel suspension. Okay, so just watch this. Okay, so we will do this. So just watch this. I'm going to use the restroom. I have seen it, so I'll be right back. Okay, and watch this. Please stay with me. Stay with me.
Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. When Stephen Colbert announced that his late night show was being canceled back in July, the president of the United States, Donald Trump, had a chilling reaction.
Fallon has no talent. Kimmel has no talent. They're next. They're going to be going. I hear they're going to be going. I don't know, but I would imagine because they get, Colbert has better ratings than Kimmel or Fallon. You know that.
They're next. I hear they're going to be going. Well, tonight, an ABC spokesperson confirms that Jimmy Kimmel's late night show has been preempted indefinitely. Now, it comes just hours after a large set of ABC affiliates announced they would refuse to air Kimmel's show. They say because of comments the late night host made on Monday night relating to the motives of the man that shot and killed Charlie Kirk, wrongly suggesting the killer was part of the MAGA movement. He was not. Nexstar, the largest owner of local stations in the country, came out and said it, quote, strongly objects to recent comments made by Kimmel concerning the killing of Charlie Kirk and will replace the show with other programming in its ABC affiliated markets. And if that were the whole story, he said something, it was not correct, the affiliates pushed back, well, then that would be one story. But that, of course, is not the whole story. Okay? Because crucially, just hours before that statement, Trump's hand-picked FCC chairman went on a podcast and suggested ABC's broadcast license or affiliates could be at risk if they did not suspend or fire Kimmel, essentially issuing an order saying, and I quote him here, "We can do this the easy way or the hard way."
It's never been easier to start a podcast than with Riverside. Here's how it works. First, go to riverside.fm and open an account.
I'm so clumsy.
And then you'll be able to capture high-quality video and audio from practically anywhere.
Well, hours later, ABC made the announcement Kimmel would indeed be taken off the air indefinitely. And
oh, my God.
This is just the latest chapter in Donald Trump's ongoing campaign to crack down on free speech, dominate the media, and essentially render the First Amendment meaningless. An extreme campaign.
Totally right, Joshua. Do you hear how he said, we can do this the easy way or the hard, like that easy or hard way stuff? Yeah, very mafioso-esque.
Has been on overdrive the past week. I mean, just yesterday, you had the Deputy Attorney General of these United States, the number 2 of the Department of Justice and the former criminal lawyer for the president,
I hate when people say these United States. I don't know why. It just seems pretentious to me. Like, oh, the Deputy Attorney General of these United States. Okay, why'd you say these? Why'd you pluralize?
Suggesting using criminal anti-racketeering laws, the kind of things used for mobsters, RICO statutes, to go after and prosecute protesters who heckled Donald Trump at a restaurant, who yelled at him. We're also getting new reports today. The White House plans to target a variety of left-leaning groups and nonprofits in the coming weeks, all part of a larger and more dangerous effort underway, and it follows a playbook we have seen successfully run in recent years by authoritarian strongmen in places like Hungary and Turkey and Russia. Because in those places, they didn't just criminalize speech they didn't like, though some of them did some of that. Crucially, they made it virtually impossible to see and hear examples of that speech by taking de facto control of the media landscape.
Yep.
In Hungary, for example, the country's oldest newspaper was suddenly shuttered after being...
I'll do a stream on Orban sometime. Trump is really mimicking a lot of Orban's playbook.
Bought by a businessman with links to far-right President Viktor Orban. According to Reporters Without Borders, Orban has used media buyouts by government-connected oligarchs to build a true media empire subject to his party's orders. The group estimates such buyouts have given Orban's party control of some 80% of Hungary's media market resources. It is a similar situation in Turkey, where, according to Reuters, the biggest media brands are controlled by companies and people close to longtime leader Recep Erdogan and his AK party, following a series of acquisitions starting in 2008. Then, of course, there's Russia, where oligarchs friendly to President Vladimir Putin control much of the media. Wartime restrictions have shut down the rest.
Yeah. So remember, we've been talking. I have another video that someone posted on here about how fascism is taking place all over the world. You also have Modi in India doing similar things. I mean, this is happening everywhere right now. It's really quite scary, the globalization of fascism. Joshua, Donald said he was going to designate Antifa as a terrorist organization. The people are saying that he is admitting that he is a fascist when he did that. Yeah, I think so, Joshua. I think I talked about this a little bit, but yeah.
In each of these three countries, they didn't just arrest protesters or dissident journalists or show up knocking on the door of magazines. They used government power, and sometimes through legal mechanisms, to essentially roll up all of the country's media into a friendly propaganda arm of the regime.
Sound familiar?
So given that context, I want you to look around the U.S. right now and see what's been happening here right in front of our eyes. In July, the Trump FCC, that's the entity that Brendan Carr controls, approved the sale of Paramount, with it, CBS, to Skydance Media, which is controlled by the family of pro-Trump tech billionaire named Larry Ellison. It was his son, actually, who's buying it. Now, that approval only came after Paramount paid Trump $16 million to settle the president's obvious, frivolous, ludicrous lawsuit against CBS News and 60 Minutes for editing interviews. And after the Ellisons agreed to eliminate DEI programs, and after they agreed to install an executive, formerly from a conservative think tank, to essentially act as a sort of ideological minder at CBS News for political bias. So they did all those things, then they got the approval for this very, very large merger. After that, CBS canceled Stephen Colbert's top-rated late-night show, which was notorious for its criticism of the sitting president. Last week, after Larry Ellison officially leapfrogged another pro-Trump billionaire, Elon Musk, to become the world's richest man.
And by the way, folks, a lot of the big newspapers in the United States have been bought up by people like Jeff Bezos. Okay. I mean, it wouldn't take much for there to be, basically oligarchic control over all the media apparatuses. Robert, did I miss something? Let's see here. What'd you say here? I may have missed some people's stuff. Yeah, okay. Drusilla, someone showed me on Twitter what Stephen Miller said sounded like one of Goebbels' speeches. Oh, Drusilla, Stephen Miller is a monstrous human being. Okay. Yeah. And he looks like Goebbels. I wish he would follow Goebbels' lead when it came to the end of the war. I won't say what I mean by that, but you can look up what happened to Goebbels at the end of the war. Anyway, are we going to get into the government-sanctioned news phase? I'm not sure what you mean by that, Joshua. I mean, we're kind of there, but yes. No more monopolies. Totally agreed, Kimberly. Break up the monopolies. We have always been at war with Oceania, Joshua. Mithra, I love it. I love it. And the good use of the 1984 thing, Robert. Okay. Trump failed. My mill has a Christian friend in India and says they're being persecuted. I told her I would too if I had seen what the Crusades did. Oh my God, Trump failed. Okay. All right, let's continue.
The new Paramount conglomerate made another media bid, this time for Warner Brothers Discovery, which just so happens to own CNN. So there's a possibility that they could purchase that and roll that up as well. Then yesterday, we got this news about TikTok. Perhaps you've seen it. Do you remember the Chinese-owned app that was banned as a security risk because of a bipartisan vote in both houses of Congress and signed into law by Joe Biden? And then Donald Trump just literally ignored the law while he searched for a U.S. buyer. Well, yesterday, there was news of a framework of a deal. Interesting. Let's see what the deal is. Gives Americans an 80% stake in TikTok. Which Americans? Well, you'll never guess. Yes, Larry Ellison is one of them, along with far-right venture capitalist, Trump donor, Doge consultant, MAGA backer, Mark Andreessen. As Talking Points memo noted, if all those deals all go through, that would mean the Murdoch family controlling Fox News, the Journal, New York Post, its other properties, Twitter, TikTok, CBS, CNN, and more owned by Elon Musk, and the Ellison family, the Washington Post, owned by Jeff Bezos. The Trump administration is threatening to bring the government down on free speech and use it against dissent. It is also facilitating the sale of some of our biggest private media outlets to Trump allies and is a very obvious attempt to consolidate power over free expression. Ben Rhodes served as Deputy National Security Advisor to President Barack Obama, author of After the Fall, The Rise of Authoritarianism in the World We've Made. David Enrich is a New York Times Deputy Investigations Editor and reporter.
So I wanted to pause it there. Okay, you don't need to see the rest of it. I'm trying to limit your ability to see free speech. But you can see here, even though it might not be direct suppression of free speech, they are definitely going around free speech laws to gain control of the media, okay? Because also, remember what I told you, our free speech laws do not apply to private entities. It only applies to the government. So if they can get private entities to do the suppression for them, it could largely be legal. And that's a problem, right? And not only that, folks, I have heard it, it is also the case that a lot of the judges in the United States were appointed by Trump or appointed by Mitch McConnell, essentially, or, it got pushed through by Mitch McConnell. So the judiciary is also largely controlled by Trump. Not completely, don't get me wrong. We still have a lot of people coming out against Trump. So, but on top of that, Trump has been ignoring a lot of judges' rulings. So even if a judge were to rule against him in a free speech type case, would he listen to it? I don't know. Okay. A couple more things here. And it's gotten to the point, I don't know if people, I'm not defending Republicans. Yeah, you all know I'm not defending Republicans. But there have even been some Republicans coming out who are like, wait a minute, what are we doing? Okay. Because you have to understand, folks, if some of the Republicans are thinking ahead, right? If Trump is allowed to do it, what's going to stop the Democrats from doing it? Well, first of all, incompetence will stop the Democrats from doing it. But you see what I mean, okay? If we normalize any of this, it'll also hurt the other party if they ever lose power. So you'll see. The real fact. Here's another one. This is what Ted Cruz and stuff, gross, disgusting Ted Cruz has to say about it. But again, what is it? Cancun Cruz, okay?
Those are Ted Cruz's words. The senator speaking out. As hell. Those are Ted.
Oops, there we go.
Dangerous as hell. Those are Ted Cruz's words. The senator speaking out about Trump's FCC chairman Brendan Carr and his threats to ABC to deal with Jimmy Kimmel the easy way, or it would be done the hard way. Here's Cruz.
Look, I like Brendan Carr.
Yeah, you're right.
He's a
Trump
good guy. He's the chairman of the FCC. I work closely with him. But what he said there is dangerous as hell. He says, we can do this the easy way, or we can do this the hard way.
Yeah.
And I got to say, that's right out of Goodfellas. That's right out of a mafioso coming into a bar going, nice bar you have here. It'd be a shame if something happened to it.
Okay, well, there it is. As we've said from the beginning, this is what it is. And tonight, Trump is not happy with his friend, Senator Ted Cruz.
So again, using the authoritarian tactic of the bully pulpit to silence even the Republicans who are speaking out against it, like Trump has always done in the past. He always shuts up the Republicans and they always end up falling in line.
I think Brendan Carr is a courageous person. I think Brendan Carr is a great American patriot. So I disagree with Ted Cruz on that.
Carr is courageous and a patriot, says the President of the United States, for what he said. So let's just play it again. What did he say about ABC after Kimmel's monologue, which included comments about Charlie Kirk and the suspect in his murder?
They have a license granted by us at the FCC, and that comes with it an obligation to operate in the public interest. But frankly, when you see stuff like this, I mean, look, we can do this the easy way or the hard way.
Of course, Elliot. You're right, Elliot. I should point that out. Of course, Cruz didn't call out Trump, right? He called out the head of the FCC. So he's still too much of a slug with no backbone to even lightly criticize the dear leader. Do you remember how Donald Trump actually basically called Ted Cruz's wife ugly and shit? And Ted Cruz then, like a few weeks later, was like, "Oh, Mr. Trump, I love you so much." He's such a cuck, isn't he? He's like the most cowardly little slug on the planet, and he looks like a cowardly little slug, doesn't he? No backbone. But anyway, he did criticize the head of the FCC.
And within hours of that warning, ABC pulled Kimmel off the air indefinitely. And Trump's assault on the media has it's gotten a lot louder even since then. Tonight, the president, in his second confrontation this week with ABC White House reporter Jonathan Karl, threw a lot of insults at Karl. his network, and other networks, all after he was asked this. Let me play it.
You've said that you restored free speech in America.
Yeah.
Is that free speech including for people who are harshly critical of you, for your political opponents, for people who say things you don't like?
I've become immune to
treat
it.
you unfairly?
I've become immune to it. There's never been a person that's had more unfair publicity than me, and that's why
Oh my God, I can't even. Okay.
your network paid me $15 million or $16 million.
Oh, absolutely, Malzord. He absolutely will. And don't get me wrong, folks. I'm just pointing out. You're right. Like Ted Cruz, I'm not praising him as a person, but you can see here that even some of them are like, ugh, this is going to end badly. But they will immediately. Meowsword says back to the Lovecraftian. I love your references to Lovecraft, Meowsword. I love Lovecraft. Cruz is doing some smoke and mirrors for now, but will bend over when it matters, 100%, or get on his knees, whatever the situation requires, Meowsword. But yes, absolutely.
I believe, to be exact, George Slopadopoulos. And
Yeah,
that's
immune,
why
Drusilla.
CBS paid me a lot of money too.
Yeah, and don't we
and
love?
that's why-
Yeah, as Drusilla said, immune. Isn't it funny how um, yeah, right, Joshua. And also, it's funny how he's like, I'm immune to it, even though he's the most thin-skinned human being on the planet. Like you can almost see his internal organs. He has like no skin. Like any light criticism, and he throws a tantrum like a toddler. I always love how he's so little bitch baby. Okay, cannot take any kind of criticism whatsoever, and he's like, I'm immune to it. I'm immune to it. Yeah, okay.
I sued the New York Times 2 days ago for a lot of money because I'm winning. I mean, I'm winning the cases, and the reason I'm winning is because you're guilty, John. You're guilty. ABC is a terrible network, a very unfair network, and
See, there's the bully pulpit again. You can try and push the news sources into obedience through intimidation and through calling them out like that.
you should be ashamed of yourself.
Yeah, you're right, Tiago. I am so immune, the best immune human being ever. Yeah.
NBC is equally bad. I don't know who's worse. I think they're equally bad. And for you to stand there and act so innocent, and
You're
ask
right,
me a question
Drusilla.
like that. But look,
you have a right
you
to
paid a
stop?
big price because you were dishonest, John. The reason I won that lawsuit was because you were dishonest. You were proven to be dishonest, and so you can't sit back and just say, "Oh, well, what do you think?" Like you're some wonderful person.
Well, I mean, that's literally his job, though, is to ask you questions, Trump. Like I don't like, and Trump is just so little baby, can't take it.
You're not a wonderful person. Frankly, you're a terrible reporter. You know it, and so do I.
I mean, can we just take a step back and realize that there's the insanity and absurdity of that entire exchange? For the record, and I guess it's got to just be said, Jonathan Karl is the best of the best, and certainly doesn't deserve to be spoken of as a terrible reporter. But Trump has free speech too. And on the point of suing the New York Times, it was just today that Trump's $15 billion lawsuit against the Times was flatly rejected by a federal judge nominated by former President George H.W. Bush. The judge calling it decidedly improper and impermissible, comparing the 85-page lawsuit to a mega.
Why do I? Yeah, that's a good question. Why do you do your job so casually, so revolt? Well, look at the name there, Robert. Casual revolt, right? I'm doing a casual revolt here. Okay.
phone for public relations. And as Jimmy Kimmel's future at ABC remains unclear, although, right, they pulled him off the air indefinitely, dozens of ABC affiliates
100%,
across the
Joshua.
country
100%.
were planning to air Charlie Kirk tribute specials during Kimmel's usual time slot tonight. Well, the former CEO of Disney, Michael Eisner, who led the company for 2 decades, has come out and broken his silence. Doesn't usually come out.
You're right about that, Meowzord. I will say, though, Meowzord, Trump does one good thing from a leadership book, okay? If you've ever read Sun Tzu's The Art of War, Sun Tzu says that in order to get your side to fight better, like put their back to like a body of water or a mountain or something so that they either will fight and win or they will all die. And boy, does Trump put his people under siege all the time, right? He's constantly fucking things up to the point where he is constantly under siege, which makes all of his supporters more radicalized and feeling like they're under siege. Does he do it on purpose? No. He accidentally does that one good leadership tactic that Sun Tzu recommends, but the rest, you're absolutely right. Okay. Yes, I loved it, Louise. I loved the coverage of Trump. Yeah. Okay. Yep, take all credit, blame everyone else. You're right. What does a head of state say things like that to a journalist? It's cuckoo. 100%, Drusilla.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, Joshua. He's failing upward, okay? In that one area. Sun Tzu would say, great tactic, Mr. Trump, okay? By always being so incompetent that you're putting your own people under siege all the time. Okay, anyway.
Out and talk about things with the company, but he did tonight, and he said this. Where has all the leadership gone? If not for university presidents, law firm managing partners, and corporate chief executives standing up against bullies, who then will step up for the First Amendment? The suspending indefinitely of Jimmy Kimmel immediately after the chairman of the FCC's aggressive yet hollow threatening of the Disney company is yet another example of out-of-control intimidation. Elizabeth Wagmeister begins our coverage out front. As anyone watching knows, Elizabeth has been leading the breaking news on this Kimmel story, and you're here again tonight, Elizabeth, getting new information.
Okay, so you all, we don't need to see the rest of that, but you get the point I'm trying to make here, okay?
It was a very good book.
So Trump is doing all he can. And by the way, folks, as I said before, this is actually the sign of a weak government, right? If a government were strong, it wouldn't have to go around the laws and shit to try and suppress freedom of speech. It's still following. It is trying to avoid litigation and stuff like that, and avoid the courts by doing it in a sort of a backwards way, which is a sign that the Trump regime is not as totalitarian as they want to appear, and that's a sign that resistance can work. Does it mean like that they won't be totalitarian or anything soon? No, but it's a sign of a regime that does not have full control, which is a good thing. But it's also a bad thing because that could mean that they're going to crack down. Exactly, Meowsword. Weak people can't negotiate with their competition. I hate my enemies. You're right. Okay. Yeah, you're right. You're right, Joshua. Okay, so what we're seeing here, very interesting things, suppressing of free speech and stuff. Yes, King Alo, I know. That's fair, Alan. And I do want to watch it though. That's why I put it up because I know you posted it. Okay, folks. So what we're going to do now, okay? We've talked about all the free speech stuff going on. You all know that I like providing context and stuff, but you all are probably out there able to read. Thank you, Alan. You all are probably out there wanting to, reading the news and stuff. I mainly try to provide context for it. And then you can find, you can find elsewhere the news or whatever, and then you can use the context to help you interpret it regardless. What we're going to do now. First of all, as always, I got to do some self-promotion here. If we get 3 super chats, I will put on the jester makeup. If you like what you see here, you can become a member on YouTube for as little as only 99 cents. Only 99 cents a month. You get access to exclusive emojis and cute little jester hats next to your name in the chat. Or if you're over on Twitch, please follow. If you don't want to see ads, you can subscribe for $5 a month or for free using your Twitch Prime membership, okay? Which will help give Jeff Bezos his money to me, all right? So please do that. You also get access to some emojis if you do that as well, okay? All right, so we are going to watch. These are some things. You're totally right. You're totally right, Robert, okay? So we're going to watch. I absolutely love Norman Finkelstein. Brilliant historian, by the way. He has written some amazing books about history and stuff. Also, very vocal advocate for the people of Palestine. And so this was sent by Alan. Thank you, Alan. Now, Alan does give this disclaimer before we watch it together. I sent this video. Highly respect Norm. Anyone who knows him knows that he's very brash and brazen in the language he uses. I highly disagree with what he says at the end. Okay, so we'll see what he says. I have not seen it. But the title of what Norm is saying here, it's Trump doesn't need fascism. He has no opposition. Norman Finkelstein. Okay, so oh, yes, Trump failed. Thank you very much, Trump failed, for the super chat there. Yes, Trump failed. Here, I'll send you my email address, my business email address or whatever. Let me pull it up for you real fast. And while I'm doing that, folks, I'm going to start the video. So this is Norm talking about fascism. Now, I will say, I don't even like saying this, but Norm is a fellow academic. His expertise is not in fascism, okay? It is about the history of Israel-Palestine and things like that. But again, he's still a great historian. But all right, so let's see here what he says.
There was a very good book. The author slips my mind. Very worth reading. It came out shortly after World War II, I think maybe like 1947, 48. It was written by a German Jew.
Real fast, I just posted my email in the chat. Also, folks, please join our Discord. We have a great and fast-growing community over there. The link to that Discord, I'll post it in chat now. It is also posted at the top of the page for anyone who's interested, but I will post it now. We have a really great community over there. You can also go there to make recommendations to me. You don't have to, though. You can also email me if you want to send me recommendations, but we have a great community over there on Discord. And we do like live voice discussions and stuff over there a lot. All right, there's the Discord link. I recommend everyone join. Okay, continuing.
Woman. And the book had, the title gave away the book. You know, she was very smart. And when you're very smart, the test of intelligence is to capture complex ideas in simple, lucid language.
Yeah.
Okay, I love Norm, but I will say the one thing that bothers about me is as he's gotten older, he talks so slowly. So slowly. He always makes great points, but I'm going to speed it up a bit. Oh, thank you, Tiago. Thank you very much. So, folks, at the top of the page, there is a link to buy me a coffee if you want to send me money that way. Thank you, Tiago, for doing buy me a coffee. We only need one more now. Okay, so thank you, Tiago, for that. Okay, here we go.
And the title of the book was Hostages of Civilization. She's referring now to the situation of the Jews. And she said the German Jews were hostage to German civilization, meaning 19th century, early 20th century, Germany was by a wide margin regarded as the height, the peak.
Wait, folks, just to illustrate this, I am now on 1.5 times speed, and Norm now is talking at what would be like a normal rate of talking.
European civilization. Just to take a homegrown example. So there is W.E.B. Du Bois, the great African-American scholar of the 20th century. He goes to Harvard. But going to Harvard was a deal, but it wasn't a big deal. Because then he goes off to study in Germany. When you wanted to be at the peak, you go to Germany, okay? If you take the left, all of Europe, they revered the German Social Democratic Party. That's where all the leading lights were concentrated. And when what was called the SPD, the Socialist Party, SPD in the German, we call it German Social Democratic Party. When they spoke, everybody listened and everyone acted, okay? So Germany was the peak of civilization. And the author wrote that we were hostages of that civilization because beneath the veneer of civilization, there lurked a lot of ugliness. There lurked a lot of ugliness.
Yeah.
And what Hitler did.
And folks, this is true in America too, right? You know, we have oftentimes a sense of American exceptionism, okay, and things like that. There's also the notion that, but underneath that, right, underneath the veneer of quote unquote civilization is a lot of violence. And this has been the case in almost every empire in history, the British Empire, the Roman Empire, the American Empire, the French Empire, okay? A lot of times the people who claim to be the pinnacle of civilization are also committing horrific crimes, ethnic cleansing, war, suppression of dissent, and things like that.
He tore off the veneer. And then the German Jews, but obviously others as well, I don't like to say others as well, German Jews, German working class, many categories of German society suddenly fell victim to the ugly underside of
Thank you, Tiago, for the other super chat.
And that's basically the era we're now entering with Trump, the ripping off of the veneer. So it's a real problem. I can't deny it. And that's why I said I will not counsel.
And by the way, there is an argument made by some historians about the Nazis that says that their whole goal was to remove laws and to get rid of barriers for them acting on their bestial instincts. And it was largely true, okay? They didn't like the legal system and stuff because it prevented them from doing what they wanted to do. And so Norm is right in that we're seeing under Trump is an attempt to sort of deconstruct the legal system and things like that so that they can just do what they want without these constraints, okay? Get rid of the quote unquote veneer of civilization and just do it, okay? I really like, I'm going to talk about that sometime on live stream, the laws and stuff in Germany, but Norm has a good point.
Anybody who to vote for, because I recognize it's a balancing act. It's not a clear choice. But the Democratic Party, they didn't even want to they articulated the choice in a way which was false. There's not a danger, in my opinion, if you take words seriously, this word fascism. There isn't a danger of fascism here. Do you know why? Because there's no opposition. Historically, fascist
okay, Alan, trust me, I know you said that, okay, I disagree. There is an opposition in the United States. We're seeing it now because we have a 3-branch government, right? So the legislative branch can resist. There's no opposition, the judicial branch can resist. The legislative branch isn't really pushing back, but this is a big. There is some resistance, right? Trump is deeply unpopular, but so that doesn't mean he's also. But the regime is pretty weak right now, right? So he's not really exactly, Joshua. The people are the opposition. Okay, we the people, most of us, I would say. But that's why the regime is kind of weak right now. It is having trouble going as far as it wants to. It is having to do it slowly because there is a lot of opposition. Okay, but I love Norman Finkelstein, but no, I see what you're saying, London. That is a fair point, London. Hello, London. Our glorious leader is here. Hunter, yes, there is hope. Okay, I don't want you to think there's no hope. We need major change, though. We need some major reforms. We also need nonviolent resistance. Okay. Yeah, there's hope, though. But admittedly, Hunter, yeah, it's worrisome. I don't. It's not looking good right now, but there is still a path forward. But we need more people to be to voice their opposition and act on their opposition. Okay.
Fascist elements came
Right,
into power
Joshua.
when there was a strong left. The institutions of what we used to call bourgeois democracy were in jeopardy.
And forgive me, I'm saying this again, folks. Remember what I said too, that the right now the administration is showing itself to be weak. So that's a sign that if there was more organized opposition, they might have to sort of roll back some of. They might have to sort of pull off the brakes a bit, okay, or pull off the gas. So, wait, what happened? Trump failed? Did something happen with Tiago? What happened? Did I miss something? Because I'm trying to read. I will never buy a coffee again. Well, Tiago, I think. Thank you for the coffees. I mentioned. Didn't I say thank you for that? Did I miss another one? Thank you, though, Tiago. Really, thank you for that. I'm not going to react to it right now, though, Tiago, because we're in the middle of this. But, Cade Winter, is there hope without any more violence happening? I did, Tiago. I see the messages. Something nice, and then the thing about the song. I got them. Thank you. Yes, I did see you said something nice there. Okay, so folks, let me put my face up here. We'll finish this. I'm getting some good questions here. Is there any hope without any more violence happening? Yes, Cade, there is hope without violence happening. All right. Mass nonviolent resistance can be extremely effective. Like if we were to do a general strike or some other kind of massive nonviolent resistance, that can be very powerful. There are other means that can be used instead of violence. Violence should be the last resort. Violence often ends badly for everyone. Yeah, there are other things we can do. What that requires, though, is for people to make sacrifices and for people to organize and actually act on it. And right now, I don't think there's enough of that. But all of you, if you have time, place, you should be trying to push for that. I don't want people here to lose hope, and I understand the feeling. Trust me, I understand the feeling. But there are ways to push back, and there is still hope in that regard. As I've said before, I did a stream once on revolutionary optimism. We need to present people with how actions they could take can create a better future for everyone. And we need a sort of a vision of what we want for the future, and we need to resist. And to get people on our side, we need to present them with a different version of society or a different vision that can give them something to fight for. Okay? Okay. All right. So there is still hope, folks. And remember, folks, I studied fascism at the graduate level. I'm not just shooting this out my asshole. Okay. I'm not just, I'm saying it based off my knowledge of history. So, but I know things look dire. But there are other ways. And also there isn't hope. This is kind of a negative hope here. But if the economy collapses, it's not looking good. Economic suffering can oftentimes kind of knock people out of their fascist days. Okay. And if the Trump administration continues on its path, we're going to have a lot of economic suffering. That might be. Oh, London, that is Long Beach Dragon. So if the economy does collapse, that might knock a lot of people out of this sort of obsession with Trump, because if it starts affecting them materially, that might convince some people. I'm not certain of that, but there are other things that could happen. But in the meantime, we need to organize and stuff. And folks, I don't know. Yeah, I know, Drizella. It is sometimes a train. But and the other thing too. Exactly, Joshua. Exactly, Joshua. Yeah, like the French Revolution. Joshua, you're after my heart by referencing. You're okay. You're after my heart there because we did a stream on the French Revolution. But yes, so there are other things that might happen. But that being said, we need to organize now and stuff. Folks, I got an email from the Ohio organizer for the General Strike Fund. They added me to their Discord server and stuff, and I'm planning to share some of that info with you. I don't know who added me there, but they did. So there are organizations out there. Okay. Yeah, yes, it's amazing, Linda. And there's something called revolutionary ecstasy. When you go out and protest, it can be a very pleasurable experience. I mean, not sexually. I mean, for some people maybe, but you see what I mean. And it can feel very liberatory. And I've been to many protests and I love it. It's very thrilling. I recommend people go. Okay. I've been to the No Kings protest. You guys notice I had a No Kings shirt from the last No Kings protest. So yeah, there are things you can do and they can be very fun. Okay. All right. You're right, Trump failed. Economic things can be delayed. But, at the very least, it can cause yes, the No Kings protest, which is going to be, what was it? Pretty soon, October 18th. Yeah. Look it up, folks. You can go to that. And all these things, it might seem small, but they put pressure on a regime that's already displaying its weakness. And I suspect there'll be a lot more people at these ones than at the last ones. And there were millions of people at the last ones. Okay. All we need, folks, by the way, if we want a general strike to work, we only need 3% of the population to do it. And I posted in Discord a link to the general strike group that they're making a list of the people who'd be willing to do it. It's not like personal information you have to put in there. But if they get enough people, they'll start pushing for it. Yep, Victoria. So the collapse of dictatorships can often occur if they fail to provide for their population. The successful, it is, London, it is, but that's not that much when you think about how much people hate Trump. And as Toy just said, so this fascist regimes that are successful, okay, are ones who try to try to raise up their people economically a bit. Like the Nazis, as horrible as they were, they did some things that improved people's economic situation, not defending them. So did Mussolini and things like that, which allowed them to maintain the regime. Trump ain't doing that. Okay, Trump ain't doing that, all right? At least he's barely doing that. He's actually making things worse for people, which might make it hard for some people to justify supporting him. Again, don't lose hope, but we do have to resist, okay? We can't just sit here passively and hope things go well. All right. All right, guys, let's continue with this. Yeah, Joshua, 3% are constantly protesting. We just need to convince them to stop working for a day. All right. Okay.
And the ruling elites acquiesced in a strongman coming into power in order to repress the elements on the left, which pose a real danger to their system.
No, I'm sorry, guys. There's a lot of. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Well, this is actually. You're right. You're right. I'll put it back up. But the comment here, London. This is a good comment, London. Trump's entire administration is the ultimate propaganda machine. Other regimes attempted to do some good, to have the people on their side. This has been doing it by lying. Yes, but London, if push comes to shove and people's like material realities change, if people start actually feeling it in their paychecks and things like that, and in the cost of living, the propaganda won't matter so much anymore, will it? Right? Because if people are directly feeling it, the propaganda kind of loses its value. No, I understand, Hunter, and I'm not saying everyone. You're right, Hunter. I need money too much to not work right now. There are other ways to resist too, Hunter. If you can't do the national strike, there are other ways to do it. Right? You can go to protests. I did a stream once on the 298 methods of nonviolent resistance. There's tons of ways to do nonviolent resistance. I'm reading a bunch of things here, folks. Yeah, you're right, Joshua. But you're right, Joshua. People are feeling it right now, but they're not feeling it. We're talking. Unfortunately, we need more suffering. Okay, that's terrible to say, but if that's why I said this is not necessarily a good outcome, we would need massive, much worse economic suffering than what we're having right now to kind of knock people out of it. But there are other things too, nonviolent resistance. And folks, I know. I'm not trying to be like, think on the bright side, okay? I acknowledge this is extremely difficult and it's not looking good right now. I agree. But if we get too much into despair, then things will definitely get worse. There are things we can do. London, yep, there is no strike protection, right? For a national strike, there would be no strike protection. But what would they do, London, if 3% or more of the population did a general strike? Are they going to fire everyone? And again, this is why I said there would need to be protections. There would need to be people willing to make sacrifices. Okay. But again, I'm not only advocating for that. There's other forms of resistance too. Okay, guys. All right, let's continue with this video here.
One of the socialist society.
Yeah, exactly, Joshua. They can't arrest all of you. Okay, literally, all the jails would be filled over. Exactly. In London, it might result in total economic collapse if they did fire everyone. But that would be an inspiring thing for changing people's mind, wouldn't it? Okay, again, all right. And by the way, folks, you can form mutual aid societies and stuff that help support each other during a time of a strike and things like that. But there are some social control things here. He might actually, Alan. Okay, there are some social control things here, right? They make it really hard for you to not work. But you could also take a sick day, right? Even if 3% of the population took a sick day off of work, that would be enough that would cause the economy to basically would very much harm the economy. So again, there are lots of things you can do. Okay, but that's not the only one.
Under the communist society,
yeah, Hunter, I'm sorry. Yeah, you can also like take a sick day, take a day off. If everyone takes, I was at a school once where it was unionized, and half of the teachers in the school took a vacation day, took 3 vacation days as a form of protest. And the school basically couldn't function and they had to shut it down. But they couldn't fire anyone because it was done legally. No, you're right, SoCal. But again, if 3% of the population were to be imprisoned, that would be unsustainable. Let's put it that way. But okay, we'll continue.
All of them rejected the capitalist society. We don't have a left here. So we don't need, if you take people in the Supreme Court, people like Justice Roberts. I've studied Roberts because I teach Supreme Court law. Okay, Justice Roberts, Justice Gorsuch, Justice Alito. They love our institutions. They're in love with our Constitution. They love checks and balances.
Right, Leland.
Because the whole purpose of the checks and balances is to make sure the rabble doesn't get out of hand. And also that no elite party.
I like the sound of that, Lee-Lane, the Trump flu. Yeah, we all, oh, I'm sorry, I have the flu today. I had the Trump flu, right?
Dominates another elite party. There has to be an equilibrium among the elites, but always within the context of repressing the rebel. So they love our institutions. Why would they abandon the Supreme Court? Right now they have 6 justices. They're not going to abandon it. Now Trump has the Senate. He has the House of Representatives. Why do you need a strongman? Why do you need an authoritarian leader?
Bessie, again, I disagree with him on this point a bit, okay? Yeah, they do control the Supreme Court and stuff, but we've already seen the Supreme Court has made some decisions that go against what he wants. It is not and there are lower courts that also have been disagreeing with him. That doesn't mean that it's good that they're all controlled by the Republicans. No, but there are some things that he is still limited on. Okay, again, but all right, that doesn't mean it won't change. 100%, Joshua. It would make the country look terrible if they did imprison everyone. Okay, so yeah, I was sorry, boss. I was sick at home with brain rot. 100%. Okay. Hey, and folks, maybe if we all do a national strike, a general strike, I can do a live stream that day. Yay! Okay, no, I'd probably strike too. But anyway, so Alan, they have very rarely though. Okay, they have very rarely, but there are still mechanisms in place partially to block some of what he does. Now, it's not looking good. He's still an authoritarian leader who has almost complete control, but you've noticed the weakness of his regime recently, which shows that he has not fully gained it yet. Yeah, I'll live stream my strike. How about that, Joshua? Okay. All right, guys.
Unfortunately, they already control all the institutions. But sorry to have to report this, that's how our bourgeois democracy operates. So this constant threat of Trumpian fascism, I think it's false on two counts. First of all, it's unnecessary because there's no left to fight against. And second of all, they can get everything they want within our system already. They control the Supreme Court, they control the Republican Party, democratically elected. The Supreme Court justices were constitutionally chosen. So then why do you need fascism? If you understand the term and you're not just using it as an epithet, as people like AOC, who's a certifiable airhead, as they use it, it's totally gratuitous. So
he said AOC's an airhead. I mean, I disagree with definitely some of the things she's done with Israel and stuff, but that's interesting.
I think on those counts, it was a scaremongering. But on the other hand, I have to say that the Trump phenomenon represents the ripping off of the veneer of civilization. There's an adage that goes, Robert. Hypocrisy is the compliment that vice pays to virtue. You get that? Hypocrisy is the compliment that vice pays to virtue. Meaning, you know what you're doing is wrong. That's why you don't admit to what you're saying. You're hypocritical. You don't really believe what you're saying. Why do you do it? Because you know that it's wrong. You're hypocritical because even
Joshua,
as you are thinking of vice, you know it's wrong. You know it goes against virtue. So hypocrisy is the compliment that vice pays to virtue. And the thing about the new Trump administration is they don't feel a need to pay that compliment anymore. They don't have to be hypocritical. They just.
But again, folks, so you all know I am kind of black-pilled when it comes to a lot of these things, but I'm not that black-pilled about, like, I mean, what he's saying here, that they don't have to do it anything. That is still the case that there are many more of us than there are of the Trump administration. They have to be worried. Every government has to be worried in a sense about rebellion, okay, and mass protest and things like that. And there is a lot of resistance to the Trump. I mean, there's a lot of people who hate Trump and hate the regime, and it's shown in all the stats. So they do have pushback, okay? A government cannot function without buy-in from its people. It just can't. And there's a lot of problematic stuff happening for them. Again, so it's not this bad. Lee Lane, that's a good idea. I could do a charity live stream, or I could even start a strike fund for people. We could do a strike fund. So if people need money for the days that they're working and stuff, we could start a strike fund. Okay.
to say what they feel. And that presents a danger. It presents a real problem. Yeah, I recognize that. A lot will depend, I believe, on how certain of our institutions react to it. I think, like our Supreme Court, these are very respectable, reactionary to the core. But certain of them are respectable, and they will recoil at certain of the egregious grossnesses of Trump, and may put a check on it. But on the other hand, there is a problem because so much of it has been legitimized. It's been legitimized because of, I hate to say it because everybody's saying it now, and I never like to join in with the choir or speak to the choir, because, and I know people are going to come down hard on me, but I'm saying it within the context. And the context is I'm a person of the left. Because of a lot of the idiocies of the woke politics and the cancel culture and the refusal
I see
to
what you mean,
acknowledge
Alan.
that maybe the other side has a point. You don't have to agree.
Oh, God, okay.
But you don't have the right to cancel. And you don't have the right to denigrate everybody who disagrees with you.
It's a very liberal pill take here by Norman Finkelstein. Yeah, I think we all see a difference between, for example, private companies. Yeah, if people don't want to buy stuff because they don't like the product, people have a right to do that. I don't know if I'd call that canceling. That's kind of just economics versus what the right wing are doing, which is the purposeful criminalization and things like that, and using the mechanisms of the state to suppress speech. Very different. Very different. Though admittedly, Democrats have done that too with going after pro-Gaza protesters and stuff. Okay.
As some sort of reactionaries.
Oh, I got you, Alan. So this is from a while ago.
Some sort of hillbilly, some sort of redneck. No, there's grounds for legitimate disagreement. Now, people are using that as a club now. If you read the papers, everybody's attacking. On the Democratic side, they're all attacking identity politics and blaming identity politics for what happened. No, I don't agree with that. I think the problem was people had nothing on offer that was going to substantively improve their lives.
Okay, 100% agree with him there. The Democratic Party, as I said multiple times, because they deeply frustrate me, need to offer something and present a positive vision of the future that gives people something to vote for, as opposed just giving them someone to vote against, right? So, like Kamala Harris, when she first came out in her election, she recommended these programs that would have improved people's lives, but then as those corporate donations came flooding in, she suddenly backed off of that and basically spent her time going after Trump. The Democrats I know they're all corrupt, so they don't want to, need to create some revolutionary optimism and create a positive vision of the future. Give people something to vote for. People would vote for universal health care. They would vote for higher wages. They would vote for things like that. Okay. But the Democrats are so heavily funded by the wealthy and the elites that they don't want to mess with the donations. And they're corrupt. Okay. So they don't want to do it. They keep shooting themselves in the foot. Yeah, the 50-51 movement, 100%. Okay. So, and they also shut down the people that do present a positive vision of the future, the progressives and things like that, who have been long trying to present a positive vision of the future and are very, very popular. So, yeah, exactly. We need more Mamdanis and Omar Fattah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But alas, the Democratic Party leadership continues to blackball them and, put up barriers because they want that precious donation money. Maybe sometime we'll talk about on stream about forming a third party. And this is complicated. I've heard a lot of debates about it. I'm not sure. Thank you, Kimberly. I'm not sure where I stand on it, but at some point, if the Democrats aren't going to do anything, if they're just going to let the fascists walk all over us, and they're not going to offer a positive vision of the future, I mean, totally, SoCal, absolutely. My problem: the GOP fought to the bitter end for business to be able to refuse service employment to people whose views, values, beliefs diverge from theirs. Now they're upset; it's turned on them. 100%, 100% SoCal. Okay.
But on the other hand, the identity politics, the idiocy of it, legitimized the other side. There are legitimate questions about, puberty blockers. Are they a good thing? It seems that the scientific evidence is overwhelmingly no. But the left made that a litmus test.
So I have not read that. I've read the opposite.
Anyway.
And support it, you become a reactionary. You become a hillbilly, a redneck, an antediluvian. You couldn't have honest discussion about these issues. So it ended up legitimizing part of the ugliness of the right-wing agenda. I don't believe the whole right-wing agenda.
And so Alan here says, I haven't seen the amount of enthusiasm for any campaign since Obama in 2008. I still remember my parents chanting, yes, we can at the TV. Yes, because although Obama, once he got into office, I don't like what he did when he got into office. He didn't do much. He kind of worked around the edges and implemented a Heritage Foundation insurance plan called Obamacare, or called the Affordable Care Act, which had been invented by right-wingers, even though it was better than what came before. His campaign offered a positive vision of the future. Remember, his two slogans were hope and yes, we can. Okay. And he was all about imagining a better America. Now, he didn't actually do much of that when he got into office, but you can see how popular that message is. So if the Democrats want to win, they should stop doing things like no malarkey, which is what I think Biden's campaign slogan was. They need to offer a positive vision of the future, and then once they get into office, they need to actually give people that positive future, improve people's material conditions. Okay.
And it's ugly. I don't even. I think most Trump support, not most, yeah, in broad strokes, most of the Trump supporters could have been won over to a left-wing agenda. The core, no. The core were, there was a fascist core. There is a fascist core, but there is the.
But see, he doesn't. Okay, this is what is bothering me about this. He says that MAGA has a fascist core, but then he says that the Trump administration is not fascist. Well, okay, I think he's conflating two things here, right? Even though they're not totalitarian, they don't have complete control over the state. Okay, that doesn't mean that they're not fascist. It oftentimes takes fascists time after they're in power to gain total control over the state and the people. So he's conflating two things, and this is why I said he's not sort of an expert on this. Still love him to death, but
number as you get further away, and those people could have been won over. Remember, 10% of the people who voted for Obama, 10% of the white working class that voted for Obama then voted for Trump. Yeah. So there was room to win these people. They're not hopeless. You're going to disagree on some things.
Fair, Alan, fair. Okay, so that's very interesting. Love Norm Finkelstein. Great, very heroic man, fighting for Gaza and the people in Gaza. Norm himself being Jewish, okay, so you can imagine a lot of the hate he's gotten for this. Also, you should watch his debate with Destiny over the Gaza issue. I know we got a bunch of Destiny simps out there. No, I'm just joking. He knows his stuff. Very good guy. Okay, let me see what we got here, folks. Oh my God, my light, I swear, this is why I need a better light here so this stops falling down, because I get excited and I start hitting things. Okay, let's see what we got here, folks. I think we have, I'm not going to, well, you know what, here. I wonder what, yeah, you're right, Alan. He is strong to the left. He campaigned for Zoran, but hates Bernie and AOC. He's very strong to the left. No, you're right, Alan, but he has actually admitted before. I've watched an interview with him, Alan, where he said that, he even admitted, he's like, I'm not that knowledgeable about American political stuff. And I've noticed over time he's moved more to the left, and I think he's still trying to find himself politically. But I like the trend over time, okay? I get excited and I start hitting things. So how dare you? Okay, so let me. What I'm going to do, we have a few other things here. I'm going to react to one more thing. I got you, Alan. And Alan, I love Norm Finkelstein. I'm just very nitpicky when it comes to talking about fascism. Okay, but anyway, all right. So let me. Okay. So what we're going to do, I have a couple other things, some shorts. I'm going to react to them.
New.
You know what? Let's do. What's this?
Many of our symbols are from the land.
Okay, we'll do this later. So I have a couple shorts here that people put in chat. All right, so here we go. We got this one first. Here we have Why is it quiet? Okay. This was sent to me. Whoever's in chat, I don't know who sent this to me in chat. May have been Alyssa. So this is just a short clip. I don't know what it is. I guess we'll find out. We'll find out together, okay? Or sent to me in Discord. All right, here we go. So we'll watch this together. All right, we'll find out. Here we go.
When Ezra Klein claims that he and Charlie Kirk share a larger project, and Gavin Newsom urges us to continue Charlie's work, I think they reveal something more important than their individual politics. I think they reveal the project that has always united the American establishment across ideological divides. Liberal nationalism. My term.
Oh my God, yes, I like it already.
I'm Tad Sturmer, an American scholar of resistance history at the University of Southern Denmark and the author of A Resistance History of the United States. I've been working through this concept for my book. I'm finishing up a chapter on violence in resistance right now. I'm trying to understand how resistance movements in American history keep getting interrupted, how so many resistance moments don't turn into resistance movements, resulting in structural, meaningful change. They get co-opted, they get defanged. And the answer keeps coming back to this peculiarly American mythology of exceptionalism. The idea that there is such a thing as the American project, the American experiment, the ever-perfecting, more perfect union. There isn't. Right? That's a construct. It was invented by the Patriots to justify the rebellion, then turbocharged in the 1830s to hold together a union that was coming apart over slavery. It serves the same function today. It has always served. It paints opposition as un-American, and it protects the establishment. You might think that's good. You might think stability matters more than justice. You do you.
This is very true. So there's something called political myths, right? When it comes to like nationalism, states and nations have to invent these sort of myths to keep people feeling connected to each other and giving them a sense of superiority and things like that. And that's very common. That's been going on in American history for a very long time. And a lot of liberals and a lot of definitely right-wingers kind of still adhered to these national myths. The idea of the American dream, the idea of, we're the land of democracy and freedom for all. Yeehaw! Let's go burn down that black side of the community. Okay, you get my point. Okay, no one quote that. Okay, but you get my joke there. Okay, my dark joke. So this is a very, and a lot of liberals still kind of, excellent. SoCal update: Jimmy Kimmel is returning to TV tomorrow. Folks, what did I say? So now that there was pushback against this, Jimmy Kimmel was back on the TV. Okay, so again, pushback can work. We don't now. Again, this is a developing story, apparently, according to SoCal, but we will see what happens. But again, there was a lot of pushback. All right, and so the Trump administration, being weak, still being a weak government, did not achieve their ends there. Okay, anyway, we'll continue.
But understand what you're choosing. The statement about Kirk from the center left are the modern versions of what bound establishment forces together in the First Republic. Yes, slavery is evil, but holding the Union together matters more. Now, the Federalists pioneered that argument, pushing for the Constitution. But those terms, Union and slavery, are not parallel. One exists in a moral context, the other exists in mythology.
Yes, Michael.
So you have to make Union outweigh the oppression of a fifth of the population. You have to invest it with some quasi-religious significance. You have to make it sacred. The American experiment, the last best hope, the city on a hill, cue sentimental violins.
Oh my God, this guy is speaking my language. This is all social control stuff. The invention of these myths, these sort of quasi-religious myths that sort of maintain social control and obedience to authority figures 100%.
Plenty of people at the time saw through this. They understood that no abstract union was worth perpetual bondage that flew in the face of the language that established that union. But liberal nationalism won, as it always has in American history. By making compromise seem noble, making injustice seem temporary, making patience seem virtuous, until it didn't, until violence became necessary to reform that union at a catastrophic cost.
He's totally right. This kind of led to the Civil War because in an attempt to constantly compromise over the issue of slavery, all it did was kick the ball down the road. And over time, tensions kept increasing, and tensions kept increasing, and tensions kept increasing to the point where it had to end in violence. And I'm glad it did. But like, if they would have made a stronger, if they would have tried to end slavery sooner, if they would have waited until I mean, 100%. And that's what the Democrats and liberals like to do. They like to kick the ball down the road for the sake of like civility politics and, compromise and crap like that. Okay.
Made higher every day by year after year and decade after decade of patience and compromise, which was really just discussed.
Correct, Robert. Slow incremental change. Hope, dream, wait. Now isn't the time. Correct. And as I say at the end of every stream, you all know what I say at the end of stream. We need major reform. Now is not the time for waiting. Okay. We've done it enough and we've gotten to this situation.
Surrender.
100% Jay
That's what
Shadow.
I keep finding in my research. This isn't an ideal.
And Jay Shadow, you probably know this, right? That even there were parts of the Constitution that were literally attempts to compromise with the slave owners. They literally just they put that kicking it down the road into the Constitution. 100%, Michael. Michael, you're on fire today. Absolutely. Okay. That sentiment always plays into the hands of people who benefit from the status quo, i.e., capitalists. Correct. Okay.
Logical point. This is about historical facts and analysis. There are nationalists on the right and left who share far more than they differ. I'm not saying nationalism is inherently a bad thing. You come at that with your own values, but this is how nationalism functions.
I think it's inherently a bad thing, but you can have your own opinions on that.
Within American political culture and to a certain extent within many political cultures. And it's all about these presumptions about America, what it should do, who it's for, and what it could be, are fundamentally the same with right and left nationalists. They're both celebrators and exceptionalists who revere the founders, who excuse, let me know if this is familiar, brutalizers and racists as visionaries, whose real message speaks somehow heroically to our moment, to which we can relate. Isn't that exactly what they're doing with Charlie Kirk?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Whether you agree with it or not, whether you think it's a good thing or not, it's the same process. So set aside the reality of his words and actions, assign him some abstract identity, practicing politics the right way, that immediately rehabilitates and elevates him. It's the same mental process that turns enslavers into champions of freedom, that transforms Indian killers into builders of democracy.
Yep.
Liberal nationalism has consistently stood in the way of meaningful structural change in American history. Not because of
and who was it that mentioned it? Was it you, Michael? Who mentioned it in chat? MLK's letter from Birmingham jail. Who was it that mentioned that? I'm trying to go back to see. I want to give you props for mentioning that. Michael, it was Michael. So Michael mentioned that MLK wrote a letter when he was in jail, and in it he basically said he felt that the biggest threat were moderate white liberals because they kind of just go with the wind and they're not willing to advocate for change, and their passivity is sort of enables worse things, and but it's very seductive. Okay. Yeah, you're right. You're right, Robert. Okay. So it's true. Okay. Joshua, I'm really liking this guy. I need to look it up. I need to look him up. I'm trying to figure out, like, he has a lot of books and stuff. Is he a professor or what do you know about him, Joshua, if you don't mind telling me?
Explicitly opposes change, but because it insists that change must happen
Joshua? Okay.
within the permitted framework of their American exceptionalism. It must affirm rather than challenge the fundamental goodness of the American project.
Yeah.
The result? Necessary changes get delayed, they get postponed, making their eventual cost catastrophic. The Civil War, the violence of the Civil Rights Movement. Each time, liberal nationalists.
That'll be really telling, Drusilla. If when Kimmel comes back, he's softer, then we know that, he still kind of gave in. That being said, it could be that ABC is going to be suing Trump. And things like that. And it could be that they got a lot of pushback. And so now they're like, oh, okay, sorry, we'll take him back. And since we're suing Trump, we'll see.
insisted the system would reform itself, that patience and working within the system would suffice. Each time, they were wrong. Each time, the delay made the price higher. And here we are again. The nationalists on the right are mobilizing, and the nationalists on the left are enabling them, not through agreement on policy, but through agreement on the fundamental project. They share
give
a
us our
commitment
bribe
to the
back, right,
performance of American democracy over its substance, the mythology of American exceptionalism over the reality of American oppression.
Do you remember, folks? Do you remember when Nancy Pelosi, during the BLM protests, she and a bunch of lawmakers up on Capitol Hill all wore kente cloths, and then they kneeled in the Capitol Rotunda, and to show solidarity with Black Americans? They didn't do a damn thing, but they engaged in this performative mythological ritual to try and make it appear as though they were on the side of Black Americans and the murder of unarmed Black people. Again, that this is all performative, and like a lot of these these government mythologies and ideologies work to make people passive, okay, or to push change down the road, and people are really easily swayed by it, okay. So be aware of that. Remember, totally mithril. So remember, folks, as I said before, it doesn't matter what politicians say. What do they do? What do they do? What do they pass? What legislation do they pass? How do they help you? Okay, because the Democrats are master at this sort of smoke and mirrors. And by the way, the Republicans are too. But okay. Yeah, it should, Joshua. It should.
When Klein and Newsom and others claim common cause with Kirk, they're not just being civil, they're affirming overtly that his projects and theirs are variations on the same theme. And we must demand, what is that theme? That American mythology has always served to deflect, delay, and defeat demands for real change?
Mm-hmm.
That's just the history. Prove me wrong. So the resistance question becomes, what exactly needs to be resisted? Is it just the far right, or is it the entire framework of liberal nationalism that makes...
What have I? Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, I know I'm doing a bit of self-aggrandizing here, but what have I been saying this whole time, folks? We need major changes. We need major reforms. We need to, that framework needs to change. We can't just stand in the center. We can't keep things going the way they are, because that is what is destroying us, okay? Oh my God, I love this guy. Was it you, whoever sent this to me? Thank you, Joshua. This is great. Okay. This is great.
A far right possible that creates space for them to operate, that treats their anti-democratic project as a legitimate part of the American experiment. Let's get on with Charlie's work, folks. Because history teaches us anything, is that liberal nationalism will always choose stability over justice. It will always privilege the abstract union over actual people to maintain the establishment of which they are part, first and foremost. And therefore, they will always find reasons to delay, compromise, and accommodate injustice in the name of preserving the American project that makes their lives possible. Until it can't anymore. Until the cost becomes so high that even the mythologists can't ignore it. And the question is whether we'll recognize that pattern this time, or whether we'll let liberal nationalism once again raise the price of necessary change to catastrophic levels, all in the name of an experiment that never really existed.
Oh my God. Okay, I'm going to look him up real fast. Tad Gromer. I don't know if I got that right. Resistance history. Okay, he's oh my God, oh my God, I'm gonna fall in love with this man. He's a historian, teacher, and a storyteller. Oh my God, he's after my heart. He's my hero now. He's my new hero. Tad examines the history of resistance and resistance movements as a visiting scholar in the Center for American Studies in the University of Southern Denmark. Oh my God, this is amazing. Okay, I can't believe I haven't heard of this guy. He looks like a pretty prominent historian. Okay, all right, guys, that's fantastic. That was a really good video. I need to look him up. I'm almost kind of jealous. I wish I were as good at talking about this stuff as he is. I know you did. You guys gave me a new crush, Tiago. That's for sure. Oh, I love that, Mithro. I love that. Okay, guys. So that's fantastic. I'm really glad I found this guy. Definitely look up his videos. Maybe I'll watch some more on stream at some point. Okay, guys. So it is currently 4:20. I'm going to get off now. I'm going to put my face back up here. I've been streaming for about almost 2.5 hours. Actually, a little more than that. So what I'm going to do is I will, of course, come back on tomorrow. Thank you, everyone who donated today, etc. It's helping me do this full time. And I think you all know what I'm going to say. I think you all know what I'm going to say. All right. So let's say it. Okay. So let's do it. First of all, first and foremost, free Palestine, please free Palestine. Second of all, never stop resisting. The easiest way to resist is to think for yourselves. The easiest way to resist is to think for yourselves, and that includes when you watch me. I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. I am a human being after all. See what other people are saying. Don't get stuck in an information silo, because the easiest way to resist is to think for yourselves. Secondly, we are living in a fascist moment in this country, not only this country, but in countries around the world. Fascism thrives in an environment where people have lost faith in their democratic institutions, so they look for more radical means of change when they're suffering. We need major reforms in this country, not only this country, but in other countries around the world. You cannot stand in the center. If you stand in the center, the fascists will walk all over you like you're a sidewalk or something. Don't let the jackbooted thugs walk all over you, okay? Do not do it. We need major reforms, and we need to advocate for major change. On the wall behind me is a sword. The name of that sword is Chainbreaker. Chainbreaker has been passed down in my family through many generations. It is rumored to have been responsible for the death of at least 7 slave owners, okay? Why do I have it back there? I have it back there to remind all of you that our ancestors have made some major sacrifices for some of the things today, even sometimes putting their lives on the line for some of the rights we have, some of the economic freedoms, civil rights, rights for women, things like that. Please don't let their sacrifice go to waste, folks. They did so much to get us where we are. We cannot let their sacrifice go to waste. And some of those things are being rolled back. And always, always, always fight for a better future. Here and always, do a strike, get out there, protest. Okay. All right, guys. I love you all. I'll come back on tomorrow, as always, probably around the same time, 2 p.m. to 3, somewhere around there. Have a good rest of your day, evening, morning, night, noon, wherever you may be in the world. Bye-bye.